We're in an anteroom in Mar-a-Lago on election night. Marjorie Taylor Greene sitting directly across from me. We are moments from getting another tranche of election results. It looks like Kamala Harris has won the state of Vermont. Is it over?
It's over. Congratulations, Vermont.
She won Vermont.
They are as foolish.
But really
as
just
they
Burlington, if you come right down to it. I mean, there's just no chance she won the Northeast Kingdom. There's no chance she won the pretty parts of Vermont, just the urban slum in Vermont. How do you feel with the limited data we now have about this election?
I feel optimistic, but I'm cautious because, you know, for the past 8 or 9 years, we've watched the left and the media totally destroy Donald Trump's character, defame him, slander him, impeach him twice, try to lock him up, try to bankrupt him, try to kill him. So my thoughts and questions are, why would they let him win?
It's a good question, and what I'm always struck by, we were just spent an hour or two with Trump just a minute ago, I think you were there, is the distance between the Trump that you hear about and the Trump that you actually experience when you're with him. And the first thing that I always notice about Trump, other than the fact he's truly hilarious, he's just so instinctively moderate. I mean, that's like the least radical person I think I know.
Right. Yeah, he's not radical.
At all.
Well, and let's be honest, they actually know him. They know him just as well as we do, Tucker.
Well, that's right.
Everybody's known Donald Trump for years. They partied with him. They hung out with him. They supported him. They praised him. They loved him.
That's
Democrats took his money. They love Donald Trump, you know, and I think maybe it boils down to this. They're really angry and jealous that they don't have Donald Trump. And maybe that's part
true.
of it.
They do have Tim Walz. We'll see if that'll be enough. Trump has won the state of Florida by, looks like, about 1 million votes so far. 30 electoral votes, not surprising. That state seems to be just like a solid Republican state at this point.
Yeah, big red wall. Well, so many people moved there after COVID, rightfully so. The Democrats shut down the country. They made life miserable for people. Suicide rates were the highest at all times. Suicide rates in children were higher than they've ever been, as if any child should ever commit suicide.
Yes.
Such a horrible thought. But yeah, a lot of people definitely moved to Florida to escape all those COVID
Well, then can I ask
lockdowns.
I mean, maybe a controversial question, but a lot of people moved to Georgia too, and yet it became more liberal. What is going on with Georgia? Why would Georgia, of all states, a state I always think of as reliably conservative, I've never met a liberal from Georgia.
Yeah.
Why is it even up for grabs at this point? What would happen?
Well, a lot of people moved to Georgia, but people have been, or businesses have been recruited to Georgia. So we have the tech corridor. We have Hollywood because somebody thought that was a good idea to give them tax credits. But we've had a lot, you know, electric vehicle battery plants.
Wait, they brought actors to your state on purpose?
On purpose.
Why would they do that?
Apparently they thought it'd be cool. I don't know. I really like Georgia back when we didn't have the Hollywood there.
Yeah, a lot of actors in your state, like real people who weren't pretending to be somebody else.
Right.
Oh, so that was a product of like intent. They were lured there.
Yeah, Republicans said that. It sounded like Democrats would be the ones to do something like that.
Not surprised.
Yep.
So right now we have Donald Trump at about 55% in the state of Florida, Kamala Harris at 44%. What do you think is going to happen in your state tonight in Georgia?
Well, they called my race at 7 p.m., literally when the polls closed. And I take that as a good sign.
So you lost? No, you were elected for the third time.
For the third time, yeah.
Last time I checked, it's interesting. I think of you and Trump as very similar in the arc of your public careers. You both came from outside of politics into politics. You were both declared dangerous to the country almost immediately. You were, for a period of like a while, months, the most reviled person in the world. You were a danger to democracy. I'm surprised you didn't get arrested. And then you kind of endured, you stuck it out, you weren't intimidated, you didn't leave. The Republican Party tried to kick you out, you hung in there, and then you became one of the most influential people in the party. It does kind of feel like Donald Trump's story.
Absolutely. Well, I haven't been arrested yet.
No, fair.
And I'm still alive, even though several have tried. But, you know, it's pretty interesting to me, Tucker, and I'm actually enjoying it very much. I get to listen to all these Republicans that denounce me and voted to kick me off committees and talked bad about me and slandered me and distanced themselves from me. I get to listen to them, and they very much sound like Marjorie Taylor Greene. As a matter of fact, they say the same things that I say.
I noticed that. You did. Have any apologized to you?
Quite a few have, actually.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
Quite a few. Not all of them, but quite a few have apologized.
Well, good for them.
Well, when they get yelled at when they go back home by their own constituents and
That's
they
right.
get asked, why can't you be more like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think they figured it out.
It's just so funny. Here's another similarity between you and Trump. He was, I'll never forget it, attacked on the front page of every newspaper in the country for saying that white supremacists in Charlottesville were good people.
Ridiculous.
He never said that.
No.
You were attacked for using the phrase Jewish space lasers, which you never used.
Said it. No, I
Right.
attacked PG&E, actually, which ironically has been in the news
Yeah.
past couple of days for shutting power
So I
off.
want to go to the betting markets really quick. Who will win the presidential election? Pretty straightforward question. Donald Trump, 66%. Kamala Harris, 34%. With about $282 million on the line so far. I think that's current. That's pretty overwhelming.
I think, and aren't those bettors? They're not rich people, right? These are just average bets. I really don't know enough about the betting market, but I would say most of them are not betting massive sums of money,
Right.
trying to swing the numbers. I think they're legitimately betting that Donald Trump's going to win.
I couldn't, after over 30 years of trying to follow this stuff and getting more confused every cycle, I feel like I know less about politics every cycle. I can't make any sense of the polls, and I don't think I'm being like a superstitious villager when I say I think they're just all manipulated. You're in the business? What do you think of the national polls in this season?
I know I've never been polled, and I know most of my family and friends have never been polled. So my common sense says, how can the polls be correct if everyone I know doesn't participate in them?
Right. Well, that's right. But is there a possibility that polls are used not to measure public opinion, but to shape it? Think that's possible?
100%.
Okay. So we had this outlier poll that got a great deal of attention in Arizona that showed Donald Trump losing Arizona. I don't know a single living person who thinks that's going to happen. But that poll was everywhere, scared the crap out of all these Republicans. Was that the point of the poll, do you think?
Probably. I think Republicans are easily misled.
Yeah, well, yeah.
We're kind of dumb a lot of the times,
Yeah.
actually. I
have been.
Well, I mean, it's easy to get scared, but I think the reality is that we've seen mass misinformation, by the media, by Democrats, by Republicans, by consultants, and it is used to sway the opinion of the people, also push their actions, right? And so if they're told over and over and over again, every single day in the news, that Donald Trump is a Nazi, Donald Trump is Hitler, Donald Trump is a fascist, Donald Trump is a dictator,
Right.
Donald Trump is losing, according to all these polls, what that's going to do is it's going to make his supporters less likely to go out and vote for him.
I think it's exactly right. Or embarrass them into not telling others that they're voting for Donald Trump. It does feel like that's changing. I want to ask you about that in 2 seconds, but just for an electoral update, we're at Kamala Harris, 35. Carmela? I
Who
give up.
cares?
Harris. 35 electoral votes so far. Donald Trump, 95, 270 needed to win. You think we'll know tonight?
I feel like we've been campaigning for years now. I would love to know tonight, but I have been shocked so many times over the past couple of years, I've quit predicting.
So Barack Obama, who I think, if you're to lay responsibility for the destruction of America at any one person, I think it would be Barack Obama, the most deceptive president in our history and most anti-American. He just tweeted, we may not know for a long time, days, and that's normal. In what sense is it normal? India, the biggest democracy in the world, gets its votes counted by sundown. Why can't we do that?
Right. Well, we should be able to do that, and everyone knows it, and they know it too. They're just liars. And the reason why he's saying we may not know for days is because they plan on stealing the election. I know we're not supposed to say that.
Why not?
Well, I'm an election denier, so I fall in that camp. But honestly, they don't.
You're an elected official, and so you have the right to comment on elections and say whatever you think about elections.
Absolutely.
You were elected.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
If you can't give your opinion on elections, then who can?
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I think it is.
Can I-
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Can I give my opinion on voting machines
Yes,
as
ma'am,
well? We
please.
should not be using them. They're very faulty. They're
course
a
not.
horrible product. I talked to people in my district that voted on these voting machines and that switched their votes. But because our country is so disgusting and attacks people that come out and tell the truth and try to be whistleblowers about what's happening, these people are scared to go on record and say what they experienced.
As someone who spent like 12 hours in depositions from voting machine companies, not even named in the suits, no, I'm very aware of their efforts to intimidate the rest of us into silence. So let me read Barack Hussein Obama, as Trump says, quote, from his tweet. "It took several days to count every ballot in 2020, and it's very likely we won't know the outcome tonight either. So please keep a few things in mind as you make your voice heard today." He speaks only in cliches. 1, thousands of election workers around this country are working hard today. Respect them. Thank them. Oh, shut up, you pompous douche. 2, don't share things before checking your sources. Really? You liar? You lecturing me about accuracy? Stop. Sorry, my hostility is getting in the way. 3, let the process run its course. It takes time to count every ballot. 27.6 million views on Elon Musk's X. So let me ask you, we have electronic voting machines because they are sold to us as faster and more accurate. Leaving aside whether they're more accurate or not, there's a lot of evidence they're not accurate at all. And they don't leave a reliable record. I think that's a fair criticism. They're not faster.
No.
Countries with hand-counted paper ballots get their results in faster than we do. So what could possibly be the point of spending money on a technology that's slower and less accurate? I don't understand. Like, what's the upside?
Well, they get a contract and they make a lot of money. That's one thing.
Okay.
But actually, I think there's multiple layers there.
Yeah.
The government is great at handing out contracts to their friends, right? Friends and family.
I've noticed.
So you have to remember that these companies make a lot of money off of providing their product to be used in our elections. I think that's wrong. I think our elections belong to the American people, and the American people largely and overwhelmingly on both sides of the aisle don't like the voting machines. I mean, if I say I don't like Starbucks coffee and I don't want to drink Starbucks coffee anymore, Starbucks is not going to sue me about it, right? They can't sue me for saying that. But yet, for some reason, these voting machine companies, when you say, I don't like the voting machines, I don't want to use them, I think they're bad, I think they can steal elections, all of a sudden we all get threatened that we're going to be sued.
Right. Some left-wing oligarch will pay the voting machine company to haul you into court. They stole my text messages and gave them to the New York Times. I was not even named in the suit. So,
which is a complete violation of your right to privacy.
Well, they're very sinister. I'd say Dominion's a very sinister company. And
well, they make a lot of money. So if they lose their contracts, they're out. But here is something, talking about Barack Obama's tweet, there was a message in there that I read when you were reading it and I was looking at it. I think something to take away from his tweet to me is he was saying, number one, be nice to the election workers. He's telling people, do not harass them, do not push back. We have election workers pushing out Republican poll watchers today. I'm sorry. We're not going to be respectful.
But it's also an inversion of the way things are supposed to work. It's like they work for us. They should be nice to us.
That's right.
I mean, I think you should be polite to everyone. That's including Barack Obama, by the way. He was here. I would be polite to him. I'm polite to everybody. I try.
But the second one was about censorship.
But the onus is on the people who work for us to be nice to us, since they're our employees whose salaries we pay.
Exactly.
So shut up, Barack Obama, once again.
And then the second one was check your sources before you share information.
Okay.
Back to the whole lecturing of
well, he's a liar, so I'm not going to take accuracy advice from him. Okay, so we have more information. This is from Glenn Greenwald, one of our favorite journalists, one of the few good journalists left. Trump is up 11 points in the heavily Latino Miami-Dade County with 80% of the votes counted. Biden won it by 7 points in 2020. Hillary won it by 30 points in 2016. Well, that's crazy. So
that's wild.
With 80% of the votes in, Trump is 55 to Kamala Harris is 44%. That is wild.
That's amazing. For a man that's talking about securing the border, and this is a heavily Latino county.
Hillary won it by 30 points in 2016, and now Trump is up 11. I mean, so my math isn't great, but that's a swing of 41 points in 8 years.
Wonder how many Puerto Ricans live in Miami-Dade.
I don't know. That's a great question. This is, to me, the long-term, the most significant number to come out of tonight, which is what percentage of the Hispanic vote did Trump win?
It's huge.
Right.
Yes, this is huge.
So, for some reason, this is not discussed much in public. But for a guy who's very famous for being a Klansman or a racist or a Nazi, he seems to be doing pretty well among Hispanic voters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Let me ask you one last question.
Okay.
If Trump wins tonight, he's on track to win. What will the message be? How will you feel? Has there ever been a greater vindication?
not yet. Not yet. I think winning tonight will be the beginning. To me, it'll be a celebration, but actually it means a lot more because it's time to get to work. And that's when the hard work really begins.
Oh, yeah.
If he wins tonight, the most dangerous time in our history will start. We have thought the most dangerous time have been the past 4 years or so. That's not true. If President Trump goes back in the White House, it truly will be, in my opinion, something we've never experienced.
In what sense? Why?
They cannot let him win. They can't let him achieve what he has promised to the country. They can't let Republicans support him to achieve the agenda that he's promised to the country because it destroys everything that the entire world, the globalists, the elites, climate change, that goes away. If America stops supporting the climate change lie, China stops supporting the climate change lie. All the other dominoes fall and that one goes away. That's been one of their biggest false gods that they've worshiped for a long time. Going even further, what have they been trying to do for, 20 years or more, even longer? They've been supporting migration, look at Europe, totally invaded Europe.
Destroyed.
America, they're trying to destroy us. That will stop. And if we really secure the border and shut it down like we're planning to do, that's going to change everything. That ruins their whole migration plan. So if President Trump goes into office on January 20th of 2025, I honestly don't know what they're going to do to stop him, and I can't fathom it, but I think it's going to get worse.
You have a keen appreciation for the ruthlessness of the other side, having been its victim. So that's something to take seriously.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, if Trump wins, pretty great.
It's going to be awesome. I swear it's going to be great. I'm going to go find some fake news person and just punch him straight in the nose.
Another Trump supporter calling for violence.
Yeah, I don't mind a little bit of violence like that.
Marjorie, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful to see you, Congressman. Thank you. And congrats on winning.
Thank you.
Ah! Thank you. All right, so we are bringing up next a friend of mine, someone who, without getting into too much detail, was one of the rare members of the first Trump administration who, in my estimation, stayed true to the vision of the candidate from the first day to the last. Not everybody in the first Trump administration did that. There were some mercenaries involved. There were some people of low character. Trump himself has said this. But there were some people of high character and clear vision. And at the very top of that list would be our guest, Cliff Sims, who sits across from me now, who's will be involved in the president's transition efforts if he wins. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
It's so great. So what do you think we're looking at, to the extent we know?
The truth is, we don't know.
No, we don't.
I mean,
we don't know. Don't
there's
admit that.
This
You're
is
breaking the fourth wall, Cliff.
Well, we just have to be honest with the people here. Tucker, right? Come on.
You're
Fake
right.
news is some other part of the complex. This is
I've
the real.
sat on so many sets on election night and kind of bullshit on it. Well, it looks like Macomb County reporting, whatever. You don't know.
You really are. It's funny, you know, as a political operative,
Yeah.
you get all these texts throughout the day saying, what are you hearing? Well, I'm not hearing freaking anything.
I
I'm
know.
like hearing what you're. I mean, you know, and it's like the same. I think about the same thing in the White House when you work there. You realize how often you experience events through the television, even though you're sitting in the building. You know, so it's really the same thing. I mean, I don't pay any attention to the polls. I don't pay any attention.
You really don't?
But I really don't. But I do think that there is something to this betting markets stuff because there's like real money. People are like laying down money.
Since you brought it up, Kalshi, am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay. We're looking at it right now on the screen. Donald Trump, 65%.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris, 35%, dropping like a stone. He's ascending like a rocket. That's meaningful, you're saying?
Well, maybe. I mean, the one thing I'll say about it is these are not yet mature markets.
Yeah.
And so we're at a point where if somebody gets a wild hair and it's like, I'm going to drop $1 million down on this right now, they can swing it quickly. But I just think there's always something to be said when like people are willing to put their money behind something and say like, I believe it's going to happen. I'm going to actually put some skin in the game.
$284 million of skin in the game.
That's right. That's right. So I think there could be something to that. I mean, we are seeing a little bit of data starting to trickle in here and there, and I will say it looks favorable. But we're still at a point now where it's really hard to say what's going to happen.
Why do you ignore the polls?
Well, I mean, how many times do they have to be wrong before you're just like, I don't even read them anymore?
No,
I mean, I've one of the things that I took away from the time that I spent with you in Maine was when you were in Maine, it's not that you're completely cut off from the world, but you are very selective about your consumption of information.
Yes, I would say.
And I have found that there is an inverse relationship between the amount that I pay attention to the news and my personal happiness.
Yes,
And
and the accrued wisdom. Actually,
that's right. That's right. So this is something you and I have talked about. I mean, there are reasons that wisdom that has stood the test of time. There's a reason it has stood the test of time. There's not a lot of what happens on cable news that ever stands the test of time.
No.
And so there's probably something to that we should probably eliminate some of that. So I feel the same way about polls. I mean, my gosh, they were wrong in 2016. They were wrong in 2020. I think they're wrong now.
What do you think it feels like to work in cable news for 25 years and realize that nothing you've said on TV matters at all, or will be remembered by anybody, or affected anything in any meaningful way?
It's got to be a miserable existence. I mean, look, Tucker, you know these people better than anybody. There's a reason.
No, I'm talking about myself.
Well, no, not you. There is a reason why these are the most miserable people on earth. I mean, they are. I've known a lot of them personally now,
I do too.
And they are miserable, sad, depressed people who have a very difficult time finding any meaning in what they're doing. And so instead, they chase. There's almost a drug addict element to it, where they're chasing the next little dopamine hit. So like, oh, well, I got a mini scoop. What is that? I don't even know what a mini scoop is. A scooplet? What is a scoop? Oh, I posted, and this is like the people that do like Politico Playbook and these.
They're the most unhappy people.
They are miserable
ever.
People.
I mean, I could name the number of happy ones on one hand. I lived next to Andrea Mitchell for years, unhappiest person. Dana Bash, I work with her, unhappiest person. It's like you just go down the list, like who's happy? Well, I don't know.
They're also the least self-reflective people I've ever met in my life, and that would actually do them some good to like have a little bit of self-reflection about this, because that's where you find meaning and happiness by like reflecting on the things that you are doing and have done and trying to extrapolate meaning from them. Like what should I think about this? And there are a couple that I will say is very interesting, and you and I know them, I won't say their names, who are wrestling with that right now and have been like in an existential crisis that they're like, why does nothing I'm doing matters?
That's right.
And the people I work with are miserable. And I look at the people who are 10, 20, 30 years ahead of me in this career track, and they're all miserable. And maybe this isn't what I should do with my life. I don't know. I mean, there's something to be said for you and what you've done.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I just interrupt.
Do it.
I'm shocked and thrilled. Florida voters reject ballot measure legalizing recreational marijuana use. I did not. So the pro-drug people spent more money in Florida on this, I think, more than any ballot measure in the history of Florida. They were everywhere. And in general, voters tend to sign off on legalizing weed. Why do you think they rejected this?
I do think that there is this... there are these patterns in public life. There are backlashes to certain. The pendulum swings.
Yes, that's right.
And it always swings like a pendulum. It swings hard and it swings hard, and then there's some stasis in the middle. And I think we've experienced too much of a swing too fast, dramatically to the left on this issue and many other issues.
That's right.
And you're about to see a serious backlash to that.
I'd like to see us go full Singapore on the question. I mean, it's really destroying the country. And I smoked weed every day of my childhood, so I was always for marijuana. But watching what it's doing to young boys right now, I feel like people need to go to prison right away. I mean, it's really destroying them. Like, actually, ask them. By the way, if you're around 18-year-old boy, college freshman, how many people do you know who've been wrecked by dab pens? And they'll tell you. And people are getting rich from it, and they're criminals as far as I'm concerned. So, well, that's crazy. Did you expect that?
I haven't been tracking it.
Sorry, this is something I'm just fixated on as an anti-drug person, but I really think the Saudis get it right. on drug policy. I really do.
Well,
Sorry.
Trump has talked a lot about death penalty for drug kingpins and that
yeah.
kind of thing. So I think he's on the same page
Yeah,
as
I
you on
mean,
some of this
it's
stuff here.
okay. So Trump wins Florida by double digits. Again, probably not shocking, but if you take 3 steps back, pretty big change from a few years ago.
Yeah, and then the thing that also I think about there is you're seeing people vote with their feet, so they're leaving places like California. They're leaving these, and the concern has been these people are going to leave California, move to Texas and Florida, and they're going to vote like they still live in California.
Right.
And this is suggesting that people are not just leaving the places the left has decimated, that they are leaving the left. That's the way I read that.
Well, it feels like there, to use an overused phrase, there has been a big vibe shift.
There has.
I notice it everywhere I go, just from the number of people who scream at me at airports, which is like down to almost zero. It's almost no screaming at airports now, which is kind of crazy. I was at Logan Airport this morning early, waiting to be screamed at. Not one screamer.
That's a little disappointing. Come on.
I'm kind of. I'd steeled myself for screaming. I'd had 2 Dunkin' Donuts large coffees because I was ready. Nope. Just a nice nurse came up and thanked me for my service. I said, I work in television, not really service, but thank you. But I do feel like Elon getting involved is a big factor.
Well, there's no doubt. One thing that I have noticed in the last, I mean, I haven't been doing this a long time. The 2016 election cycle was the first time I was involved in at the presidential level, even remotely close to that. And the thing that I have noticed, and it's specific to Trump, but it's also, I think, even broader than Trump, is the stigma that was attached to Trump personally,
yes,
and that was attached to being a conservative,
yes,
is entirely gone. And in fact, being a conservative is now a full-on countercultural movement because the left is, if you want to be a rebel now, you're a conservative.
Oh yeah.
If you want to be a part of the establishment and you want things to stay the same and you want to be one of these elite, whatever, then you're a leftist. If you're on a college campus right now, which used to be like the bastion of the left, is a college campus, and granted, still in our elite universities, some of them are. If you go to most college campuses around the country right now, they are voting for Donald Trump.
Oh, for sure.
They've got the red MAGA hat on. Boys and girls alike. It is completely shifted, and Elon, I think, is a huge part of that because he exists in a similar way to Trump outside of politics in the cultural zeitgeist in a way that politicians couldn't even imagine.
No.
And when a guy like that says, "This is screwed up," and I'm for the guy that they're trying to kill.
Yes.
I think that's moved votes in a really meaningful way. I even see it in my pickup basketball games. In my hometown in Birmingham, Alabama, people used to think I was kind of a novelty that he worked for Trump. Like, what's up? What's that all about? And now I walk in. They have ordered the Trump shoes and would like for me to get DJT to sign them for them. And this has all happened in the last couple of years.
I believe
it's a huge vibe shift.
I believe that. A lot of black guys in your game.
A lot of black guys in my game.
So that is a real shift.
Real thing.
And I never really believe Republicans are always we're going to win the black vote. No, you're not. But I have just in my life, just every black guy I know is like not against Trump, kind of.
Yeah, no, totally.
That is real.
100%. Well, it's now you don't want to be stereotypical about people, but if you look out across a mass of people and you think you can't have I wonder if that person votes for this person or that person or whatever. Now, if you see a middle-aged, unattractive white woman, they probably voted for
100%
the Democrat.
100%.
And if you see a young black male who has been a historic constituency of the Democrat Party, that's a Republican
captive
now. That's a Republican now.
I totally agree.
And working class voters, same thing. If you saw a working class white voter in a trailer park, historically, they would say the Republicans are the party of Wall Street and they don't care about me, and they probably voted for Democrats. That's our base now. That's where I grew up. That's in working class white America, where J.D. Vance grew up. J.D. Vance is a picture of the shift in the Republican Party. He's like an avatar for the shift that is happening in real time right before us. Those people are Republicans now, and I think it is a huge. It's a great thing for our party. It is a great thing for our party.
Of course, I couldn't agree more. I'm thrilled by it, and I think Trump has forced the party to pay attention to its own voters in a way that Mitch McConnell was never going to do. One downside is, though, that the money is with the Democrats. 75% of the nation's wealth is held by Biden voters. They're the overclass. Republicans are the underdog. Just a fact. Kamala Harris, one of your finance guys, told me today, spent 3 times what the Trump campaign. It was 3 to 1. All in, independent expenditures included. If Trump beats that, like, what's the lesson? You're outspent 3 to 1 and you win? Like, don't we have to rethink? I mean, that just seems like the biggest story ever told in politics.
There's so many things about Trump that if you try to think about someone not him doing them, it is hard to imagine because this is a larger than life personality. That were he not that, he would not have been able to break the machine the way that he has. But I think because he has broken the machine, it has shown a new way. It has shown a new path, a different way of doing things where you don't have to play by the same rules. And you know, for better or worse, this is a communications game, right? And he's a communications master. Anybody who's going to try to replicate what he has done and beat that system is going to have to be an incredible communicator.
That's for sure.
But they're going to have to be able to be willing to do it in a way that is not what is. So, like, let's think about the difference between Mitt Romney and Donald Trump. There are obviously a zillion of them. But one of them, just practically speaking, as a campaigner, one of them tried desperately to do no harm. I want to make no mistakes today. Whatever I do, oh my gosh, I just don't want to make any mistakes. The other said, I might make 10 mistakes today, but I'm going to say what I actually think. I'm going to say what I actually believe. And I'm going to bet that there are enough people out there that are going to say, I like the authenticity, that it's actually okay if I disagreed with 2 of the 10 things that he said because I knew he actually meant it, as opposed to the politician who tried to do no harm and it was a total fraud. That's the ultimate takeaway from Trump: is authenticity is the currency now.
So last question, and you're the person to answer it since you worked in government at a high level, in some of the more complicated parts of government, I think it's fair to say.
Probably.
Trump gets elected tonight, let's say, inaugurated January 20th. How does Washington respond? How do the agencies respond? I mean, every signal they've sent that I've picked up is, we won't allow this. We will not tolerate this. We can't have this. The body will reject the transplant, period. So, like, what happens?
It's hard to imagine it not being that way. Certainly in the parts of the government that you're talking about, right? I think it's going to be a very...
I'm talking about the meaningful parts, you know, the more secretive, the more significant parts, not the Ag Department.
Right.
DOJ, CIA, et cetera.
Yeah. I think it's going to ultimately come down to, when Donald Trump wins tonight, which I fully believe that he will, the people that he chooses to go in and represent his interest and the country's interest in those places are going to have the biggest stones of anybody who's ever walked into those places before,
like crazy,
and not be captured by the building, whatever the building may be. Because I saw this even the last time. Like, a lot of people go in there with the best of intentions, and then you realize how easy it is to just be like, you know what, I got the title now, and I'm a big shot, and it's actually just better if, like, if I walk out of here the day that I leave and it's the same as the day I came, that's not the worst.
Or their constituency
can't do
become.
that.
I mean, my dad worked in government. I saw this even as a child. The agency head's constituency becomes the employees of the agency.
That's exactly right.
Rather than the voters, than the country.
Yeah.
And they're loyal. Like, we don't want to besmirch the reputation of whatever stupid agency he's running, right? FBI, CIA.
Yeah.
Like, how do you find people who are ballsy enough to go against that very, very natural trend?
I think the good news is we now have a little bit of a track record. In 2016, we didn't know what certain people are going to do. Now you see who's been through the fire. You see what people are going to do. The other thing I think that we have learned is often making a change that is, let's call it a 75% change, produces the same backlash as trying to do a 10% change.
That's exactly.
And so why are we going to be incremental about some of these things?
Right.
They're going to come for our throats no matter what on this stuff. Well, at least we could do is, like, make it a meaningful change and make it worth it. And I think that's the mindset that we got to have if we get the opportunity.
I mean this. You know that I mean this. The fact that you're involved in this effort makes me feel a lot better about its chances of success.
Well, thank you.
I mean that. So thank you. Cliff Sims.
It's great to be here.
Great to see you. Thank you. So one of the big things I think that's different about this run, Trump's third run for national office, is that he's not doing it alone. There's an army of people around him. Of course, there in some sense always has been. There have been a lot of disaffected voters who felt they're not being represented by their leaders who clustered around Donald Trump. But there weren't a lot of really, to be blunt, successful people from, say, business around Donald Trump. Almost all of them are too vested in the current system to join him publicly. And that has just changed in a huge way, most famously with Elon Musk. But I would say right behind him is his friend who got there first, David Sachs, who joins me now. David, thank you very much.
Hey, good to be here, Tucker.
For coming on. So you have been a pretty, and I should say David Sachs is like a huge figure in tech world on the West Coast, San Francisco, South Bay, and you've been a pretty consistent voice for conservatism, well, since you were at Stanford, I think. But I think you were the first person at your level in your world to come out and say, I'm voting for Donald Trump, and here's why. First of all, why did you do that? And what was the experience like? What was the reaction that you got?
Well, I guess, one of the things that I did starting a few years ago was I started doing this podcast, the All In podcast.
Yeah.
We started doing it pretty much at the beginning of COVID. I guess this
Yeah.
was in early 2020. Just me and a few friends from the tech world, fellow investors. And so we started doing this weekly pod. And when you do a podcast like that, you just kind of have to say what you think. Otherwise, you got nothing to talk about.
I never understood. First of all, I want
Yeah.
to say I didn't get its significance until I went on it. And then every person I'd ever met watched it. I just didn't understand the reach of it. But
Yeah.
if you want to reach successful people, you do the All In podcast, I learned. But why did you do that? You've already got a lot going on. Why did you start that podcast?
We just sort of did it for fun. There wasn't really a huge plan behind it. It was just, we were all kind of locked in our houses at the beginning of COVID. It was really extreme in California.
Yeah.
We couldn't do anything. And so we just decided to do this podcast. So it kind of happened organically. A couple of my friends, we all played poker together. And the original idea was it'd be kind of fun if we were just to like have cameras recording us playing poker. That wasn't practical, but we just started, recording our conversations over Zoom and putting them out. And then the thing kind of caught fire and became a little bit of a sensation.
Well, it certainly did. And a sensation in a very specific way. Like you were speaking to an audience that was not reached by Trump, basically.
Yeah.
And I sense a lot of your audience had heard of Trump. They knew they were supposed to hate Trump.
Yeah.
But they're kind of absorbed in their business. I mean, that's my sense.
Right.
of it.
Yeah. No,
And
it's first and foremost, it's a podcast about business,
Right.
markets, technology, and politics. But really, it's about whatever the big issues are that week.
But
And
you're
so it's,
probably the first person your audience respects they'd ever heard endorse Trump. I guess that's what I'm saying.
I think, I was a gateway drug for a lot of people.
Wait, can I just interrupt you
yeah.
really quick? So we're just looking at these Virginia numbers. Virginia is basically a Democratic state, thanks to the federal government, thanks to Northern Virginia, which is a wasteland, I should say, with a Republican governor. And yet Trump is tied as of right now with 41% in Virginia. He's down by 0.1 of a percentage point, but he's basically tied with Harris. This is kind of amazing.
Yeah, I think Virginia was a +10 state for Biden. Wasn't
Yeah,
it?
right.
Yeah.
Was it actually +10?
I think it was +10. And then, I remember that number because when Youngkin won the state, it was such a big, upset that he could overcome, what had been a 10-point deficit. So, yeah, look, if Trump is running even-ish in Virginia, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's 41%.
So who knows?
And I don't know where they're from. I mean, that's one of those states where,
Yeah.
its components have nothing in common with each other. Southern Virginia has nothing in common with Central Virginia, or certainly Northern Virginia, nothing in common with Southwest Virginia, et cetera. You can see what a weirdly shaped state it is. So you come out for Trump, and you just basically say, I'm for
Right.
Trump. And you say that to a bunch of people who, I suspect, think they hate Trump. What's the response?
Well, I think that it hasn't been as negative as it was, I think, in 2016 or 2020. I think that, in fairness, there were a couple other folks who were trailblazers going back to 2016. I mean, Peter Thiel, in particular,
Yes, for sure.
really was kind of far out there when
Well,
he
he
endorsed.
spoke at the RNC
Yeah.
in 16.
Yeah, that was a big deal, and I think he took a lot of slings and arrows for that. I think by the time that I did it, I probably was one of the first people this cycle to do it, but a lot of people ended up kind of following, and ended up, at one point I tweeted a list of kind of major figures in the tech industry who had endorsed Trump, and it was like 20, 25 people. So there was a lot of people who came on board, and then obviously Elon coming on board was a huge deal, and he's gone all out.
Deal, is it not?
Yeah, I think, look, I think that one of the reasons why so many people have come on board is because the last 4 years have just been so bad. It's just been so egregious. I mean, Biden and the Democrats came into office promising a return to normalcy. This is what they called it. What did we actually get? They opened the borders. I mean, just totally inexcusable. There's no justification for that. They gave us trillions of reckless spending, and they wanted more. Remember, Build Back Better was originally supposed to be something like 6 trillion, then it was 4.5 trillion. Eventually they got it, I think 750 billion plus all the other trillions, the Inflation Reduction Act and all the rest. So we had that massive inflation. We had the lawfare and the censorship, I think, alienated a lot of people in our world, because it's just so fundamentally un-American to prosecute your political opponents. I think this is the thing that kind of made me want to kind of go all in. Well, I mean, yeah, I was conservative before and I would have supported Trump or whoever the Republican candidate would have been, but it made me want to do so much more to see that Trump was getting prosecuted. They were trying to put him in prison. They're trying to bankrupt him. They're going after his kids. I mean, it was just beyond.
Calling him a rapist when he didn't rape anybody.
It's just beyond the pale. And then, they started going down the line. It wasn't just Trump. You can see what they're doing with Elon. They're prosecuting his companies now, or the government's got all sorts of investigations into his companies, mainly because he restored Twitter X to being a free speech platform. So political retaliation is just now part of their playbook. And if you let them get away with it, if they win this election, they're going to keep going with that. The only way they stop is if they lose, and then they have to reconsider whether these tactics are alienating people. But if they get away with it, they're like, okay, this seems to be working. Let's just keep doing more of this.
And they have the temperament of animals. Like they don't believe in sportsmanship or fair play. And so once they start winning, they get blood on the tongue, and it makes them more vicious. I have noticed that.
Yeah, I mean, it is vicious.
So last question. I know you think about this a lot since you're in the tech world, but social media, if Trump wins, it'll be because of social media, new media.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Doing Rogan's endorsement is more significant than any other endorsement other than Elon's, I would say. Can they allow social media to stay open in the way that they are, particularly X, to stay open?
Well, it is a giant loophole in their control of the legacy media.
Yes.
And it's such a big loophole that it kind of threatens that whole superstructure that has been created or has been revealed. I think one of the things that's been most interesting about the last, let's call it 8 years, has been that, initially when Trump first won, it was because of issues. It was kind of, you could call it the old Pat Buchanan issues. It was the border, it was trade, it was the forever wars, and Trump sort of pulled that sword out of the stone and used it to slay the Bush family dynasty and then the Clinton family dynasty. And if Washington had just taken the note, if they had just said, okay, we need to make an adjustment here in our policies, then the whole country would have been different. But that's not how they reacted. They said, we have to stop this no matter what, even though what did Trump really wanted to do? He just wanted a wall, and he wanted to pull our troops out of wars we were losing anyway. But that was just totally unacceptable to them. And they reacted with lawfare, with hoaxes, the Russiagate hoax, the scandemic. And it was a collaboration of not just the Democratic Party. It was the Democrats and the whole legacy media running, the Russiagate hoax, and the administrative state and the security state. So, what I think happened is that the opposition to Trump revealed itself to be something much greater than just, a candidate. It's kind of like, you talked about in one of your speeches how this was like the hero's journey. I mean, Act 1 was sort of him, winning the presidency. Act 2 was The Empire Strikes Back, and it revealed something about our government, that our government is not just it's not just Trump versus Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. No. It's about this larger. They're really just a avatar for this larger superstructure, this marriage of of sort of the of government, the permanent government, the administrative state, the legacy media, the Democratic Party, and then all of their various affiliates, whether it's the big tech platforms that are engaged in censorship or the Hollywood celebrities who are always endorsing. So we kind of learned that I think we learned something about the nature of our government that we didn't know before. I think, and this is what I think is so important about this election, is it's not just about Trump versus Kamala Harris, who's going to be the president.
No.
It's going to be about how we're ruled. I mean, are we basically ruled by these entities, these corrupt entities, who are pretending to be a fair media or a neutral administrative state, but really are in cahoots together to they're kind of a ruling class or ruling party that is it's really the enemy of democracy. I mean, it's not. They claim to be democracy, but they're kind of the enemy of it. It's basically a bureaucracy. Elon tweeted a really funny meme today where there was someone took a clip of all the legacy media types talking about the threat to democracy and had AI replace the word democracy with bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And it made perfect sense.
Well,
it made perfect sense.
They've just redefined the term.
Yeah.
If Kamala Harris can claim to represent joy, a woman who kissed her own husband with a mask on, then the Democratic Party is about democracy. David Sachs, I think if Trump wins, it'll be in part due to you and your bravery. So I just want to thank you.
Well, thank you. That's
and
very
I
nice
hope
of
if he
you.
does that, I'm still around. We can go celebrate.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
So among the many members of this new coalition, you sort of look ahead, who's going to run the Republican Party in 10 years is someone else from completely outside of politics who I don't think had any plans on getting into politics, and who joins us now, Vivek Ramaswamy, who's really, you almost never see, this is not flattery, it's real, you almost never see anyone run for president, lose, and become enhanced. It's like everyone who runs, Jeb Bush, who was widely regarded as a really smart guy until he ran for president, we realized he's actually kind of stupid. Everybody who runs and loses, Ron DeSantis, poor Ron DeSantis, I'm not attacking him, but he was diminished. You were enhanced. I'm not quite sure how you did that, but it was amazing.
Well, thank you, man.
It's true. It's true.
I also hope that I'm not running the Republican Party 10 years from now, because our country's in great shape in about 4 years, maybe in about 1 year, and we can all find other productive things to do beyond this world of politics. But that's, I think, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but it's feeling pretty darn good.
Well, it is, and I hate to turn to. Well, I guess now that I no longer work for a TV network, I can turn to whatever I want. But I hate to turn to fake numbers.
Yeah.
But in the absence of real numbers, let's dive into the fake numbers for a moment, if you don't mind.
Fine.
Here are the Wisconsin betting odds. Did I really just say that? I feel so low.
I think betting odds are a better place to look than
it's
these
probably
early
right.
poll numbers.
The ABC Ipsos poll.
Yeah.
Okay. We are now on the question of who will win the election in Wisconsin for president. We are Donald Trump 56, Kamala Harris 44. And it's changing even as we speak. 56-44. Well, it's readjusted. Whatever.
But it was like that was as of 10 minutes ago or something, right? It's
I think
it's rapidly changing.
Seconds ago. Yeah. So you think he's got a shot at Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we'll know Wisconsin probably before Pennsylvania based on how long they're actually saying the ballots are going to take to count. So it might be
takes
that we
an awful, is it because Pennsylvania is such a long state?
Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't seem like a very satisfying explanation.
Oh, okay.
In the year 2024, we're able to catch
Tennessee
rockets.
is also a long state too,
Yeah, it
right?
kind of is too, right? We were able to catch rockets falling out of outer space, returning to Earth, but we can't count some votes that are submitted in the same rate that we did about 40 years ago.
Actually, it's such an insult to the third world.
Yeah, it actually kind of is.
Because
the third world does it well. Actually, for all the stuff about Puerto Rico recently, I went to Puerto Rico. I actually like Puerto Rico. I spent a lot of time there. And they do their elections really well. Single day voting on election day. It's a holiday for the entire island.
Yeah.
Paper ballots, and they actually make you, like that glass of water, it's like a die. You
Oh,
stick
yeah.
your finger in. You make sure that they check it like an amusement park to make sure you don't vote at multiple locations. People trust the elections. They're secure. They get the results quickly.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's got a purple finger. I've seen it.
I think that we can learn something from Puerto Rico and how they run their elections. And I think that we are the ones actually doing it
if a country
third
that
world way
can't
right now.
produce reliable electricity can have free and fair elections, then I think we can too.
Well, I think Tucker, we're going the other direction. They're trying to also make sure that we're not also able to produce electricity here, right?
Oh, I'm laughing. It's
just messing up our elections was the first step to getting to also not running our electricity by shutting down our coal mines and not fracking for natural gas. But we're maybe about 7 hours from changing that for the country.
So why would Barack Obama, and I'm sorry to be cynical, but I spent all 8 years of his presidency in the United States watching carefully. Why would he tweet out like it's a great thing that it's going to take days to find out who the new president is? Election workers are heroes. Respect them. Thank them. Don't share things before checking your sources. I'm trying not to use the F word on YouTube, but like, how dare you, Barack Obama? You liar! Lecture me about accuracy, and then let the process run its course. It takes time to count every ballot. Well, not in India, it doesn't.
Oh, this came out today, though.
Yeah,
I think it's clear why this is coming out today.
Yeah, so Obama's telling us like it's going to take forever to we may have leaks in the pipes in polling stations.
If Kamala actually was surging, this tweet would not have gone out. So it's, whatever. We all know it. Politics is a game of self-interest. They don't want to look like fools at the end of this. If it goes longer, there's some probability that things could change in their direction. So yeah, I think he's tweeting according to his incentives. I think that's
again,
pretty predictable.
He is. You're exactly right. And I don't mean to feign shock. I watched this guy for 8 years, but have you ever seen an election go into overtime and the Republican win?
No, not that I can remember. You've been around long. I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, I don't think this one's going. I think that Trump used this expression. I think it was smart. Too big to rig. I think we are. It certainly feels to me on our way to get there.
So here's Chris Wallace. Here's someone I've never quoted. Chris Wallace is one of the most loathsome women in television. But let me just quote this headline. CNN host Chris Wallace argues Kamala Harris would be, quote, a miracle given exit polls.
Well, I don't think a miracle is coming for her tonight. And, look, I think that one of the risks, I feel really good about tonight, and that's great. And hopefully we wake up tomorrow morning, maybe even, and, we know that Donald Trump's the next president. That's the start line, right? And so if you look at just every way this machine, we just trace the last year, right? What has this machine tried to do? Civil suits first, then criminal suits, then extrajudicial attempts to remove him from the ballot, then more extrajudicial attempts on his life, not one, but then two. So they've tried every trick, and that hasn't worked. And he is still going to win. It looks like, I don't want to count on chickens here, but resoundingly, what's the next remaining step is to impede the administration. And there's multiple ways to impede it. You can impede it through the front door. You can impede it through the back door. And so I think that in some ways, this idea, and I think the little bit of the feigned retreat, the psyop, self-consciously and all of this, even if we're not aware of it, is that somehow November 5th is like, yes, then we've done it. Or November 6th, we wake up tomorrow morning, we think we've done it. And I think that's just us getting started. And I think the real fight some ways either begins or continues.
That's totally right.
And so that's kind of, I think, the check that I want on all this.
Can I ask you a personal question since, we're on the internet, we can say whatever we want.
Yeah.
How did you wind up, you and Trump have such an easy relationship. He seems to like you, you seem to like him, you ran against each other. But you don't do the ass kissy thing that a lot of people do.
I can't.
Well, okay, but I watch like Mike Pompeo is just like giving Trump a tongue bath every time. Oh, Donald Trump, your hands are so large, or whatever. It's just like repulsive and it's transactional and false, obviously, as Mike Pompeo is. But you don't do that. You never kiss ass. You're direct and nice. You just seem to get along. How did you?
So far,
get
so
along
good.
with the guy you ran against, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I committed myself to in the race is the easy thing to do would have been to slam Donald Trump for something that he said that you disagreed with.
Yeah.
And for me, he actually was objectively the best president of the 21st century. And people said, how could you run against him and say that? Well, first of all, that's like the easiest thing you could possibly say. You got George Bush, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump. So it sounded really great, but it's like the most obvious statement I could have made. And people said, oh, is he running as some type of, Trump ally as in the race? So to the contrary, I think we started from a good place.
The hottest Supreme Court justice. Yeah. The best caterer in Tajikistan.
Yeah, but that understates actually how good of a job he did. And I think it's our candor that allowed us to build a pretty good friendship afterwards as well. I knew him for a while, but we've only gotten to know each other really well after I left the race this year. And yeah, I'm not a natural sycophant, and I think that Donald Trump actually appreciates having people around him who are able to
I agree with that.
speak. And I respect him more because of that, because that's not the media narrative that you get about him. But what I've seen is he's somebody who wants to be challenged. He likes to actually when he asks you for a question and you're just giving some sort of nodding response, that's not helping anybody versus sharing what your actual opinion is. Now, he'll bust my balls sometimes for, he'll say, you talk too fast or give me a headache, but he's joking around with me. And, I think that's part of what's made us have a pretty good
I
relationship.
think that's absolutely right. I think it's really insightful what you just said. Trump does love the butt kissers, but he likes the people who don't butt kiss even more. Actually,
I
think that's true. I think that's true.
Yeah.
And good for him.
Yeah. I respect him more for it, man.
So when do you think, I'm sorry to ask you about politics, but you ran.
Yeah, I know.
When do you think we know?
So I should tell you, there's a lot of things that I think I have authority on. Horse race politics stuff is absolutely not it. But I think probably tomorrow morning. I think Wisconsin, we know by tomorrow morning. So I think basically it'll go Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, Wisconsin. And then that's basically game over. So Pennsylvania will still take a long time, and I think we're going to win Pennsylvania. Credit to a lot of Elon and Scott Prestel and a lot of people who have laid a lot of groundwork there. Not necessarily the traditional party machinery, but the outside of party machinery that's laid a lot of groundwork there.
It's not the traditional party
if you
machinery.
look at Arizona, I'll give a lot of credit to Turning Point. I think they've done a really good job out there. Incredible.
Definitely.
I visited them recently. The analytics
too.
were really, just like as a business person looking into the rigor with which they're running it there. And to some extent in Wisconsin too, I'll give Turning Point a lot of credit for those two regions as well. But who cares about who gets the credit for what? It's the objective.
Well, it's interesting. No, it does
But
matter
you
because
learn
it's
for the
not the
future.
party that did it.
You
It's
learn
not,
for the future. Yeah.
It's not the RNC. It's Charlie Kirk, who's like
Yeah.
30 and doesn't have a college degree and is turns out to be better at
kind of a
running.
genius at this, actually.
I absolutely agree
Yeah.
with that, and I think a really good guy. But so that's meaningful though. So if the biggest players in all of this, you had no background in politics at all, right? Elon Musk,
Totally.
Charlie Kirk. I mean, these are just people like Donald Trump himself.
Totally.
Who came from outside and have really. Do you think the Republican Party has permanently changed?
Yeah, I do. I think that this is a redefining election. I think that's what makes this win even more exciting is that the Republican Party, to use a Kamalaism, we ain't going back. I think that's true here. And that will be one of the parts of this victory where, I'm just thinking about, we're, again, here talking, let's just talk frankly, right? I was on the stage with a lot of people who were of an old garden variety, stuffed suit, Republican mold from the past.
Yeah.
And that's not taking anything away from them. People who come in the range of politics, that's what their career has been. I think the Republican Party of the future is going to be defined by people coming in from the outside who have a fresh perspective, who are able to speak hard truths to Democrats, but also to yesterday's Republicans as well. And we become, I hope, this party of just practiced evolution, right? We're just repeatedly evolving in a way that it doesn't become stultified, doesn't just become tied up to dogmas. And this is something I've actually this not to get too philosophical, but I don't want to see the America First movement do what the neocon movement did for 20 years, which is, and I see some of this, right? We're the party of the working class to some guy who 10 years ago was saying something else, but doesn't know why he's saying it today. I don't want people saying things out of habit.
No, that's
we want people who understand why they're saying them. And, people like Elon and people like Bobby Kennedy, who I respect, and JD is an outsider. Donald Trump is the ultimate outsider in this. I think that it's going to take people coming from the outside who are thinking people, who, by the way, all of us who I just named, don't agree with each other on 100% of issues.
Right.
And that's cool. But that, I think, is going to be the character of the new Republican Party going
forward.
forward.
And it is new. And this really is going to, and this is a concern for me, wreck Mitch McConnell's retirement party. I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just wasn't around in politics enough to know enough about that legacy to even care about it.
So let me just bottom line it by saying that's a good thing.
Yeah. It just doesn't matter to me.
Vivek, I think we're going to have a long conversation later this week.
I'm looking forward to it.
When we're going to know, I really am too.
Yeah.
About what comes next. Thank you.
Take it easy.
Good to see you, man.
Thank you.
All right, so nobody has done more live events. No one's been on the road more. No one has asked for less credit than our next guest, Donald Trump Jr. Don, how many events have you done?
I actually don't know. I know October 2020, I did 104. So I imagine I matched that, maybe did a little bit more this time around because that was peak COVID and no one was willing to do stuff. So I can't tell if I did more or if I did a little less because it was more than just me on the road. But no, it feels really good right now, Tucker. I mean, I died 2 days ago, but It's just
You're like Joe Biden right now.
It's caffeine, nicotine, testosterone,
Yes.
and adrenaline. That's all I got. That's all I got. I don't have a pulse or a heart rate.
Drugs.
You know,
You don't need
it's fine.
SSRIs or
Yeah,
benzos.
screw that.
You have the drugs you just mentioned.
I got the drugs.
So how does it? I'm sorry. I've asked every person the same stupid question, but it is election night, so I can't control myself.
I got you.
I mean, where do you think we actually are?
Listen, I've done this 3 times now. I feel this is by far, the most comfortable I've been on election. I'm never comfortable. You know me. I sort of function like I'm always 3 points behind, whether I'm 10 points behind or whether I'm 10 points ahead. Some of it looks really good, man. When I see, the rural vote, turning up. When I see, we just won Miami-Dade by 10 points. Like it's never been ever been read. We won it by 10 points. So Florida, just a landslide.
I think you lost it by 30, right?
Yeah, we lost it by 30 in 16, and we won it by 10. A 40-point swing in 8 years. That's pretty significant. Now, that's a different demographic. Those are people who came from Cuba and Venezuela who are like, yeah, we don't want to revert back to that. I don't know if that translates, to the Hispanic population throughout the rest of the country, but something's definitely going on. It feels like North Carolina, where we can actually have reasonable and fair elections, where we have rules that aren't insane. Florida, North Carolina, we can do really well. Georgia's looking good right now, and so it's going to come down to, one of the blue walls.
Do you think it's fair to say that you're going to do better in states with voter ID laws?
I think without question.
So what does that tell you?
Well, because listen, there's a reason the other side doesn't want these things. It's not to preserve democracy; it's to preserve their ability to cheat more easily.
Of course.
No one doesn't believe that. I imagine in their heart of hearts, even Democrats understand that. They're just okay with the results. Not exactly preserving democracy, but that's always been a soundbite anyway, right?
So, at what point will you know the outcome, do you think?
You know what? I don't know. I just want people to stay in line. I want them to vote. You'll know tonight if it's decisive, if people stay in line, if our guys show up. What I don't want to do is give them an excuse to say, well, we're going to count for 2 more weeks, so we got to double check this, and then they show up with a trailer full of ballots that are only filled in for the president because that's all they had time to fill in some warehouse outside of the district. But like I said, it's by far the best I've ever felt going in. We just got to finish this thing.
Looking back, it's not over yet.
Yeah.
But let's say it's 3 days from now, and Donald Trump's the president again. What were the moments, do you think, the pivotal moments in the campaign?
Oof. Man, there's so many.
Yeah, there are.
Honestly, the pivotal moments.
It's the craziest thing I've ever. Oh, he takes Ohio.
Okay, well, see. Now I'll be curious to see what that is. Hopefully, we can grow because the reality is I want to also make sure we bring in Ohio Bernie Moreno over the finish line there because I don't want the presidency without the Senate and the House. I've been there. I've done.
Well, also Sherrod Brown in Ohio is the biggest fraud in the United States Senate and really just a loathsome person.
Well, actually, it's probably John Tester in Montana.
Well, he's done.
I hope so. And if Tim Sheehy pulls that off, I think that's great. But yeah, all these clowns, they're running, hey, I'm with Trump. I'm like, well, no, you voted to impeach him twice. You voted with Joe Biden 99% of the time. You're not with Trump. But, they understand where these people are, and in those, state races, they're basically lying to them on TV on a daily basis. I understand it's politics, but it's just a flagrant lie.
Moreno was up. There's the Libertarian who I think his campaign was paid for by the Democrats, of course.
I'm sure it was.
Always.
It always is.
So, by the way, if you say you're for workers and then let in 15 million people into the country.
You're not actually for workers.
No, you're not.
Or Americans or anything other than, candidly, abject chaos.
Oh, totally.
And death. But that's the reality. That's what I don't understand about the Democrat Party because they've shifted so far from their working class roots.
Yes.
Now it's like, I don't know, rather than cater to, I don't know, those working class people or your citizens, it's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to replace them. Yeah. And I know, a few months ago that was really controversial, but it's like, what else could it possibly be? Why, when they let in 20 million people and 600,000 of whom are criminals and 13,000 are murderers and 16,000 are rapists, they know that. These are Joe Biden's, and Kamala Harris's.
Texas has been called. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, and it looks like Ted Cruz is going to win big down there too.
I don't know why. Texas made me nervous. There are just so many illegal aliens in Texas right now.
The problem, the real reality is we've just flipped Hispanics over there. They're the people that are actually, and I've done events down on the border and all of this, and
56 reporting Ted Cruz at 51.3, Colin Allred. I mean, more money spent for Colin Allred. Like every actor in Hollywood sent money to Colin Allred.
Well, and that was the same thing. I was with Ted Cruz, back the last time he ran 6 years ago, and I was with him on the bus. They're like, hey, can you help us out? And, this is, when it was still a little bit, rougher, and, but we had a good relationship by then, and him and I sort of got along pretty quickly. He was sort of quick to come around, actually, after sort of a rough primary.
It was bitter.
I know, and at 16, it was brutal. And then, Tommy Hicks, my good buddy, and I, because of hunting, basically, all my friends, half of my friends are Texas, and they're basically like, hey, you want to come? What the hell was it? It was that Bill Kristol, I don't even know the name of the group anymore. They're so irrelevant. The hell is the name of that group that they have? Bill Kristol's group. I don't know. One of those rubber chicken think tank like Washington, D.C.
Just like Hudson Institute or AEI.
AEI. It was their dinner, and I was like, I don't want to go to this. Like, I have no interest. They're like, no, you got to come. And it was Ray Washburn and Tommy Hicks, and they basically stuck me at a table. And I'm looking around, and everyone's sort of laughing, and I'm like, I'm like, why are they laughing? And I look down, and like the place card next to me is Ted Cruz, and this is like, a month after that rough primary. It was pretty brutal. And so
the funniest primary ever.
Oh,
Rafael Cruz killing JFK.
It was wild. It was wild. And we sat down, and it's awkward at first, and we started talking, and at the end of this dinner, I was like, hey, Ted, we're all going back to the Trump Hotel back at the time when we had that in D.C. You want to join us for a couple drinks? And he was like, yeah. And you know what? Honestly,
really?
Ted Cruz with a couple of beers in him is a super funny guy. Like, we had a great time. He took every selfie that was asked of him. We had a good relationship from that point. But I was with him, I guess it was 18.
And that was even before the election.
Oh, yeah, that was before the election. And so, we became pretty friendly. And then 18, he was like, hey, can you come down? And we did like 5 or 6 events one day, like a week from, his race. And he gets his fundraising numbers. And it was like $13 million. He goes, we just set the record ever for like an in-state race. Look at this. This is amazing. And, Beta O'Rourke got his numbers like 3 hours later. And we just got done with another event. And we get the reporting like Beto just did 33 million. And it's like,
oh yeah.
And like he set the record and they tripled it plus kind of thing. And it was like, oh man. I mean, that's what we're up against. And when you look at any one of these,
against right now, it's 3-1.
Oh, I believe
your
it.
Finance guys
then it
told
was 3-. And when you think about it, this is not like some unknown race. This is a Texas senator in a Republican state getting outspent 3-1. Some of these are 5-1. Some of these congressional races, they're 10-1. It's almost hard to believe, we can compete. Against some of that insanity. And none of it's from in-state. None of it represents the values of the people who are actually voting.
I think the presidential race is 3-1.
Oh, 100%. I mean, she spent $1 billion. That's why when people were doing they moved, $2 out of North Carolina, I'm like, they really mismanaged their funds that badly that they got to pull out $2 million out of $1 billion from North Carolina.
But if a candidate's being outspent 3-1 and all the money is coming from Hollywood and finance, then that candidate, the one who's being outspent 3-1, is the underdog in the race.
Oh yeah, this whole notion that Kamala Harris is the underdog. They're trying. I'm like
3-1. Really?
Like, what are you talking?
I don't think I've ever read that though.
Oh, I've seen people push that like she's the underdog. I'm like,
no. But the fact that the Trump campaign is being outspent 3-1 and is still winning is pretty crazy.
No, it's amazing. What I'd love to see, because the country is a business in a way. Give someone here's $200 million. And come up with a lower number for the Senate. But they're going to spend $200 million against Tim Sheehy in Montana, like Chuck Schumer. 200. You know what $200 million is in Montana? A state of 1 million people with a cheap media market. That's billions. If you were spending it in a bigger state, it's insane. I'd love to see the presidential race. Here's $300 million apiece. Run it like a business. Do it efficiently. Come up with, make sure people actually know. Because when you have unlimited funds, it's sort of like Ukraine, right? When you have unlimited funds, why would you ever get to the table? Why would you ever work?
Totally
why would you
right.
ever
It's
do something
exactly
smart?
right.
I'd love to see something
it's
like that.
It's like inherited money. It's why they're all drug addicts, right?
Yeah, it's disgusting. And when I think of the money that's blown on these things, and then the special interests and this, and then everyone gets man, it'd be nice to cut some of that out and just be able to do what Americans actually want, not what the guy that bought you for the last 2 years while you're running a presidential actually wants you to do. And so, yeah, I guess it's why they also hate Trump, is he hasn't been bought.
Well, he definitely
Right,
has been
he
bought.
doesn't care. When he goes to these fundraisers, I've seen him yell at these guys that are big donors. They're like, I mean, I won't even mention names. You'll know them because I'm sure you actually loathe some of these people because I know I do. But I mean, I saw a couple times where they just sort of went really anti-Trump and then try to come back around, and he doesn't even open the door. Just talks to them like you would a petulant child. And I'm just like, well, there's $25 million out the window, but man, it was worth listening to that.
Well, I just watched that about an hour ago. I don't know if you were in the room with your dad, but there are all these big donors in the other room right there. And he was joking with one of them, who's a very famous, one of the richest people in the world. And he starts making fun of him.
Yeah, no,
like ridiculous. Like, I don't think anyone has spoken to this billionaire that way ever. And it was, it was joking around, but it was
this example that I'm talking about, was not at all joking around. And it didn't it didn't matter. You just see this guy that's, worth 12, 15, 20 billion dollars, just walk away with it, his tail between his legs. Now, he doesn't give you the money which you need to combat some of the stuff. But I was like, you know what? We probably could have deployed that capital, but man, that was worth it. That was the best $25 million I've ever seen just burned.
I love that.
Douse it with lighter fluid and set it ablaze. It was sort of so. Yeah, man, it was interesting. Last night, just being in Michigan at 2:00 in the morning, watching an entire stadium still energized and invigorated, and just being sort of, I think we win. I think we do great. Whatever it is, but it was man, that was sort of an end of an era. Trump on the campaign trail.
I know.
I don't think we'll ever see that again.
No.
There's not enough personality in politics. There's not enough sort of.
It's so overwhelming. I mean, I met all these people who've been to, I've been to 40 Trump rallies, and it's why? And the answer is because they're so fun.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are people that have been to over 100 that I've met, and I'm I'm not sure I've been to 100. My theory on that when they're I'm not the guy looking for credit. I'm not the guy trying to.
No, you're not. It's true.
I'm not the guy trying to be in the selfie. And politics. There's all these people well, why are you here? You could actually do something if you were out of, in all fairness, you're adding, if Trump's in the room, virtually no one else adds any value,
no,
right?
No.
It's
I've
fine.
been there. Yeah,
Give him a mic,
true.
he'll be fine. He doesn't need your help. He doesn't need your sage advice of bullshit. But you still see a lot of that where they're just there to be in the background, to be seen there, and I'm so I'm the opposite. Yesterday, I did want to do the last day. Yesterday was the only day in the entire cycle that I've spent with my father. I just
was it fun?
It was great, but I'm kind of like my dad that way. I rather have the mic also. So it's I'm sitting there at the end of 4 rallies. It's 5:30 in the morning, and I'm exhausted. And you know what it's like.
Very
get up on the stage when we did our great event up in Jacksonville, and there's 17,000 people there, and I'm you get done. It's okay, it's bedtime. It's yeah, I'm not going to sleep for hours. I'm
I know.
You absorb some of that energy when the crowd gives you that. You absorb that energy, and you're not. So it's, I'm looking at my dad. And I'm honestly, I'm always impressed with him, and whether it's getting shot in the face and coming back defiant, or but his overall energy. It's it's 6 a.m. He's been going since 6 a.m. 24 hours. He's had thousands of people that he's been entertaining. His it's not like a Kamala Harris speech, which is 7 minutes off a prompter. I mean. You can have a 45-minute speech in the prompter, but he's up there for, 120 minutes. It's I'm for the love of God, we did the first rally in North Carolina. We got there relatively on time, and by the time we got done, we're well, we're already 2 hours behind schedule. I'm I'm not going to get to sleep tonight, and I'm going to be on TV and radio all morning. So, I pulled an all-nighter, but the guy's 78, pulls an all-nighter, is doing TV all day, doesn't go to sleep at all, and I'm I don't even know that. I don't have that at 46. It's I'm
well, tonight he was in there. I don't know. You were probably working, but he was in there, and the returns are coming up at the first tranche at 7. All his biggest donors standing around him, and he's doing this play-by-play.
Yeah.
In front of everybody, just for 40 minutes, and it's hilarious.
And he remembers everyone, and he remembers when they got on board, especially the guys that got on early. But the recall. Is actually amazing. When they start doing the most offensive stuff I see is when they're well, Trump's in the later stages of dementia and Alzheimer's. I'm the same people that told you that Joe Biden is alive and well. I'm it's been a weekend at Bernie's for 4 years, but he really, he gets it. And so
he's not in the later stages of dementia.
No.
I think it's fair to say. I mean, you don't have to like him, but he's not suffering from dementia.
Yeah, well, you combine just the full weight and force of the mainstream media, $1 trillion industry. You combine that. You add in, big tech, You add in, 3-1 outspin, and it's like it's hard. Like I feel like if I was a leftist, like we'd win elections by like 99.9 to like 0.01, and the 0.01 is like people who just filled in the wrong circle or something like that. Like it's actually hard to believe we can even be competitive, but that's how insane the Democrat Party is today.
I gotta say, for me, there are lots of things I'm looking forward to if he wins, but Nicole Wallace's response has got to be right at the top of the list. Like,
a couple of those, I want to like juxtapose them to like 2016, who Martha Raddatz, the very, very unbiased moderator of the Hillary Clinton debate. She's there in tears on TV. I'm like, you think she's really like unbiased? You think there's even like a little bit? And you look at the way they've analyzed the coverage, 93% negative against Trump, like 276% positive for Kamala Harris. I'm like, she hasn't even given you guys your policies. Like, if you, like, it'd be one thing if, like, hey, you excuse just overall, lack of charisma, but like, she wouldn't even tell them their policies. It's fine. Like, we'll figure out the policies on January 20th.
They have no self-respect.
It's brutal, right? Like, it's hard to believe that you can even have a close.
Wallace is just, there's something about her. It's just,
yeah.
When I was a kid, I was a magazine writer, and I went down to Florida to interview Jeb Bush on his education policies. He was like an idiot, but I was required to think he was impressive. And Nicole Devonish, she was then called, was the little gatekeeper. I remember thinking, this woman's really stupid and really kind of nasty and self-important. And then the next thing you know, I wake up and she's got a show on MSNBC, and she's like the most dishonest, weepiest, just like sanctimonious. Don't you think that her like melting down on MSNBC will make all of it worth it?
100%. Like, even 50 hours of congressional testimony for treason. Like, they're like, why'd you work so hard on this, Don? It's like, well, because I don't want to end up in the gulags next. I mean, you and I would have fun if they put us next to each other, but they probably separate us. But it's insane. But no, it's interesting when with the media, with politics in general. I came from the business world. Like, you don't just get lucky. In business, you can get lucky once, but like the guys that have 40-year careers, like they're impressive people. Politics, media, they're actually incredibly unimpressive, and it's sort of amazing. It's sort of what I love about what's going on right now. When you have like my father, and you have a Vivek, and you have a JD who, in all fairness, I think I should probably get a little credit for just kind of taking on the billionaire donor class that wanted their puppet VP. And
if only people knew how much credit you deserve for that. That was a heroic.
I don't ask for much, but I was like, I'm all in on that. It's like,
that story will never be written, but that was one of the great moments in any politics I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of politics.
You definitely exerted. I exerted 10,000% of my political capital. I may get a favor from my father in like 2076. I used it all, but it was great after the debate because
and it actually worked out. He turned out to be amazing.
Listen, if I go all in, it's usually like I feel really strong. I don't go all in often. There's not a lot of things I'm sort of indifferent. Like I'll work around some of the bad stuff. Right. This was one that was like it was really important to me, and like.
But there have been like no hiccups. It's crazy.
Well, honestly, it's sort of interesting. I've had like a lot of these like sort of Republican donor class people come up to me, which is really stupid of them, by the way. But they're like, Don, like I was MFing you for like 3 weeks about that decision because I really wanted X, Y, Z. And then I'm like, you really shouldn't tell me that you were doing that behind my back. Like I appreciate the candor now, but I'm like, that like, I don't know, like I'm going to remember that. Like, it's like, but they're like, but you were right. And then, and the only one that mattered, I wanted my father to be happy, but it was after the debate. My phone's blowing up in my pocket, and I figured it was press, or I'm doing the spin room for like 2 hours after the debate, and doing all this. My phone I'm just like turning off my phone, and it was like I had like 12 missed calls from my dad. I'm like, oh boy, that's usually not great. And he just gets on the phone. He goes, Don, I did that for you, Don, but that was a 10, and that like a huge win in Trump world is like a 6. So when he was like, that was a 10, that's as close to a 10 as you're going to get. I was like, okay, we got it. But, it was watching him, even that first week, as the narrative, they were trying to crush this guy. They would have tried to crush anyone. I understand that. Yeah. But, they were trying to crush him. And I just watched him on the Sunday shows do 3 in a row, just absolutely dismantle the narrative. Because our problem on our side is like, they want to be loved by these people who literally hate their guts.
Oh, yeah.
We joke about the gulags, but they would gladly put any one of us in them if they could just snap their fingers and make it happen. And, it was watching that where JD didn't just take January 6th was an insurrection. Okay, it was an insurrection, but it wasn't it's like, no, this is ridiculous. Like, what are you talking about? And just absolutely crush these people. And it's because no one's ever pushed back.
I know.
It's not that they're smart. It's like people want to get invited back on the show, so they concede so much ground. So, you're starting a negotiation with already less than you're even hoping to get. And it's like, well, why would you do that? And he's been one of the first people to really break the mold on that and just sort of, not just accept the narrative blindly and push back. So it's been awesome to see. Like,
himself.
well, he can explain himself. And for me, again, politics has not been like an upside business for us. It's not a business for us at all. It's cost us billions of dollars.
Yeah.
But I believe in this stuff. And so to know that there's also someone, we have a bench. There's a future of the Republican Party. It's not like now it reverts back to Mitt Romney and whatever it may be. And that was fun. I'll see you guys later. America First is alive and well. And, seeing a Vivek and seeing some of these other guys come up there and now step out and, just absolutely dismantle that establishment class day in and day out. You can just see truly impressive people actually on our side for a change. And I'm like, this is the way.
And I got to say, I feel personally vindicated because I've told you this many times, but I remember 5 years ago, oh, Don Trump's so stupid. I was like, no, actually, Don's the smartest guy in the orbit and actually understands politics on a gut level way better than anybody else in the whole.
Yeah, you had a bad news cycle for that. I remember that. I was like, wow, that was pretty cool.
Well, it's true. It's true.
And they went after you pretty hard.
But I said that because it's true. And I think now it's very obvious that it's true. So congratulations. I think you've been vindicated, and I mean that. Anyway, thank you.
Now we just got to win. Now we just
Good luck,
win.
man.
I appreciate it.
Hold on. Younger voters narrowly going for Trump. 18 to 29 in Michigan are going for Trump. That is crazy. Young people for Trump?
It's man, I see so much stuff. If you break it down per capita, I actually in the last 2-3 months, I've taken per capita more selfies with black men than any other group.
Exactly.
There is a shift. No one's buying the nonsense anymore. It doesn't mean this is it, but it feels so good because of that. It's it's not the old white guy in a MAGA hat anymore. It's a big deal. Baldwin County flipped it for us, huh?
Trump flipped Baldwin County. It's 41% black. He's the first Republican to win in 20 years. Amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
Listen, we just need this stuff to translate through. We need that to translate through in the blue wall and pick off one of those, and I feel like we have a pretty good night.
93 more electoral votes necessary. So
yeah, we haven't gotten to the West Coast yet, so obviously, she's going to make up some gains in Washington, Oregon, California, all that. But
I'm thinking he's going to do pretty well in Montana, Idaho, Utah, Arizona, and
Nevada.
Maybe Nevada, yeah.
Nevada. It was interesting. Nevada on the ground, obviously the Democrats, they've owned that for a long time. That's the Harry Reid machine and everything like that.
There we are.
I was there a lot, and it felt pretty good.
The betting markets have him at 71%.
With $291 million in play. That's a lot of money.
Well, it's going to be a little harder to steal it at this point, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, it's not, people are watching. I never gave, the RNC much credit prior to this, but Michael Watley, the whole team, these guys, lower, they got real people on the ground. They got real poll watchers. They got lawyers. So when something started happening, it doesn't mean they're going to catch everything. But before we were just okay, you can just print some ballots and fill them out and make up the difference. Doesn't mean that won't happen yet. The Democrats, they're vicious and they're evil and they're crafty. So they'll change the game. We're usually reactionary. They're a little bit more proactive to get ahead of these things. But it feels good that we actually have people on the ground. The second something went, they're on it. They got lawsuits filed. They got lawyers on the ground.
Yeah.
They got people actually watching this stuff. So it's exciting to see.
All right, I'll find you.
I appreciate it, buddy. See you in a
Thank
bit.
you, Don. Good to see you, man. So this election is being closely watched by everyone in the United States, but it is maybe even as closely being watched by the rest of the world, for whom a lot hangs in the balance. Nigel Farage is the head of the UK Reform Party. He is the author of the Brexit movement. It's prime mover, really someone who will be tied in history, I think, with Donald Trump forever, because Brexit happened just as Trump's candidacy was taking off. He joins us now. Nigel, thanks so much.
Tucker, pleasure to be here.
So I'm not going to ask you to predict electoral totals in a system that a country you don't live in, but tell us, is it an overstatement to say that the rest of the world is watching this really, really carefully?
Oh, you bet your life. This is big. You think it's just about America. No, it's much bigger than that. It's about leadership of the Western world. It's about what signal gets sent to dictators all over the world who are launching wars, causing problems, whether we talk Middle East, whether we talk Ukraine, whether we talk potentially what might happen with China, Taiwan, etc. This is, I tell you something, this is a very, very important moment. Just think in the last 4 years, what has happened around the world. I mean, the Abraham Accords, which were, I thought in foreign policy terms, the most stunning achievement of the Trump administration. How on earth he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize for that, I really don't know. That's been smashed to pieces. The Biden withdrawal of the last 3,000 American troops from Afghanistan, and by the way, all they were doing was training, the army who were going out there fighting. Not been a single American soldier killed for the previous 18 months. What happens? Biden withdraws, leaves behind $85 billion worth of prime American military equipment. And Putin says, you guys are weak, and goes in to Ukraine. So if you think how much has gone wrong in the world, how much more dangerous the world is now than it was 4 years ago, this really matters.
I mean, Tony Blinken and Biden, to the extent he's been involved, but the entire team have been spreaders of global chaos to an extent we just haven't seen in my lifetime. And the most telling fact, I'm not even sure what to make of it, but I know that it is true, is that both the Arabs and the Israelis seem to be rooting for Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what that means, other than why would the Arabs and the Israelis? I mean, I think I know that that's true. Certainly, it's the public opinion polling in Israel is like overwhelming for Trump. Okay,
yeah,
we know that, but everyone I know in the Arab world, there's a lot of people are all rooting for Trump. Well, why is that? It's because they want stability in the world. This is too crazy. It's scaring everybody. We're on the brink of something awful.
Also, what's interesting, and by the way, what we're seeing tonight with the Trump vote is a new coalition emerging in American politics. And one small part of that
is that pretty obvious even from the UK?
Well, you say from the UK, but don't forget, Tucker. I mean, I started working for American companies in 1982.
No, I know.
I mean,
you know more about American politics
I'm fairly
than
transatlantic.
I know.
But what was interesting was to see when he was in Michigan, imams coming up on the stage with Trump, and people think, how, why? Well, because of course that many people in the Muslim religion are naturally quite small c conservative. They believe in the family. They believe in morality.
And then the Hasidic community in New York is out for Trump.
Yeah.
Well, it's just kind of crazy.
This is all part of
both sides are for Trump.
This coalition.
What?
Yeah. And African Americans voting for Hitler. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's incredible.
No, it's. I hadn't even thought of it, but that's such a smart point. So you have Arabs and Israelis. You have rural whites from North Georgia in the mountains, and then young urban black men in Atlanta.
Yeah.
All for Trump.
Yeah. And Gen Z.
Young people.
Really interesting to see. There's a massive change going on here. It's huge. And can you believe, amongst young people, and I'm getting this on my side of the pond as well, amongst a lot of young people, suddenly to be conservative is cool. It's trendy, it's fun, it's exciting, it's real, because it links into ambition, it links into bettering yourself, it links into wanting to sort of succeed in the world. Now, this new coalition that has formed over the course of these last few months here is remarkable. And actually, I think after the win tonight, and I'm still feeling very bullish about the outcome, after this, there is a chance to build something that could last, I think, for many years.
Amazing. Last question. Do you think it does seem like Kamala Harris, and I understand how the Democrats sort of box themselves in with Kamala Harris. I don't think that they would have chosen her if they'd had it right, if they were able to sort of plan ahead. But the idea that Kamala Harris is like the most impressive person in a country with 350 million people to lead the most powerful country, the lies that the media are telling us, they seem too preposterous, actually. Like maybe they just went too far. Maybe there's a lie that's just too absurd, and that's why they collapse.
Well, hang on. The whole thing's been absurd. I mean, the last 4 years have been absurd. I mean, the fact you've had a president, openly, obviously senile president.
Was that obvious to you?
Oh, goodness gracious me. I mean, I could see it on day one. I mean, the whole thing. I mean,
like, what did you think? Like, you're sitting in London.
Well, I tell you what.
And you're watching this.
What do you
think?
What does the world think?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
What does the world think? We think, what on earth has gone on to America? How can they have sunk to the depths of having a man like this leading them, and at the same time making the whole world a more dangerous place. And yet, mainstream media covered it all up. Kamala Harris
for sure.
covered it all up. So yeah, I mean, the whole thing's been an embarrassment, really, hasn't it? But I mean, it's unbelievable. But also on the coalition, there's been a coalition of leadership as well. I mean, clearly Donald Trump is way head and shoulders above everybody else. He's like, in British terms, the king. He's there.
In British terms.
In British terms, obviously, because we wouldn't want to mention that here. Be too difficult. But suddenly you've got a Kennedy.
I know.
A Kennedy backing Trump. And then you've got Elon Musk backing Trump. And this is all part of this remarkable coalition that's formed.
It's incredible.
It's remarkable.
I will see you in London.
Look forward to
Nigel
it.
Farage. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. A big part of that coalition is the most powerful man in sports, one of the most powerful people in American culture, also a longtime, sincere, personal friend of Donald Trump's, and that would be the great Dana White, who joins us now. I'm doing great. I'm sure you're coming just from seeing Trump right now. How is he?
Yeah, he's good. Nerve-wracking sitting
Yeah.
here watching this play out like this. This is
The
different.
betting markets have him in Nevada at 61%, likely Kamala 39. I mean, all indicators are really good.
Right. Yeah, I would have to say when the odds makers are saying you're going to win, it's usually a good thing. It's going to come down to probably Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but it looks like he's going to win a couple states that you don't expect to win too. I don't know. We're sitting there. He's fine. He's eating. I can't eat. And
Why, you fasting or too
no,
nervous?
I'm actually not fasting right now, but I'm fasting. This is the most invested thing I've been in since
Well, it's
UFC.
kind of crazy. Yeah, so you, I think I was there when you endorsed Trump. I don't know why I think I was, but I think I was. Well, anyway, you endorsed Trump. You're one of the very first people in your world to do that.
Right.
You run a huge business, all kinds of advertisers, very complicated. No one in business makes political endorsements of Donald Trump because it's like the cost can be really high. You did it anyway. Why'd you do that?
I've been friends with the guy for a very long time. He's a good human being. He's a very good person. It's fascinating to see when the machine comes after you, what is possible. They tried to break him financially, tried to throw him in jail, assassination attempt. It's unbelievable. And I truly believe he's the only human being that I know of that could have dealt with this, and to actually be here tonight in the election, looking good from the odds makers. It's an unbelievable roller coaster
You're in a
ride.
business full of tough people, so that's high
I
praise.
tell him all the time, and I told him tonight, he hasn't slept in like 48 hours. He hasn't slept in 48 hours. He's been going to all these different rallies. He's one of the hardest working, most resilient human beings that I've ever met in my life. And he's a good person. We both have the privilege of knowing him personally. And it's amazing when the media and the government starts to attack you, what is possible. And I
Did
truly
you
believe
feel
he's the
that at
only
all?
one-
I mean, so again, if it wasn't risky, more people would have done it, but more people didn't. You did it. You were one of the very first people in your world to endorse Trump. Did you face any penalty for that?
No. It's fascinating. So I don't post political stuff ever. Right around the election, I endorsed him in 2016. I endorsed him last year's, put out a video. I went hard on social media. This time, and you start to watch, if you're going to lose followers, I gained 17,000 followers in the last 48 hours, just literally posting hardcore political
Really?
Trump stuff. Yeah. Actually, most people would see their followers dip. Mine actually went up 20,000. So no, we're completely bulletproof from that kind of stuff. My base is hardcore Trump followers and conservative, and
Why? Why is
I don't
that?
know. Who knows? It just played out that way. I mean, when you look at our business, when I decided to go through COVID, right? Our fan base grew 68% through COVID. We didn't lay anybody off. We everybody got paid their bonuses. We honored every contract, from fighter contracts to sponsorships to television deals, everything. And our fan base supported us. Our fighters wanted to fight. My employees were ready to work. I mean, it's It's actually pretty fascinating. So when COVID first started, everything started shutting down. I brought all my employees into a big room and said, I don't understand this thing, but if any of you, don't feel safe and feel like you want to go home, you're more than welcome to go home. Nobody went home. Everybody stayed. And I said, I'm going to figure this out. Don't worry about this. We're going to work through this. And a couple weeks later, and that was when he was sitting in office, and he actually put me on the sports task force to help get sports back sooner. But, nobody else was willing to do it. So I said, listen, I'll be first. I like being first. And we did it.
Wow.
And we live in America. If I want to support somebody and vote for him and get behind him, a candidate, my right to do it. And if you don't like the fact that I support him, and I could care less.
So you're living like it's 1985. You're living like it's the country you grew up in.
Yeah, exactly.
And nothing bad has happened to you. It's all been upside.
Let me tell you this, not only that, but all these people that are afraid to come out, everywhere I go. You know how many altercations I've had because I support Trump? 0. The answer is 0. Everywhere I go, it's the opposite. People come up to me and thank me. Thank you for what you're doing for our country. Thank you for supporting the president. That's what happens to me when I go out in public.
That's wild.
Right?
So you live in Vegas.
Yep.
That's a key state.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you...
And from what I'm hearing, it's one of the biggest cheating states. Clark County apparently is one of the...
Of course it is.
Yeah.
The county where Las Vegas is.
Yeah. Culinary union.
Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unite here. How do you feel about what's going to happen in that state?
Again, my feeling in Vegas feels like there's a lot of support for Trump there. When you think about our town, he's not going to tax tips. He's not going to tax overtime. I mean, that's huge for that city. Huge. Yeah. So hopefully we win it.
So here's Glenn Greenwald again. For the first time all night, the New York Times needle no longer has the election as a toss-up. Now they're saying Trump has a 65% likelihood to win the election. It is, quote, leaning Trump. Now, I think we can say fairly the New York Times is probably not putting a thumb on the scale for Trump here. Think that's fair to say?
Yeah. Wow.
And here are the betting markets. Here, we're back to your world. Donald Trump, question, who win the presidential election? Donald Trump, 74%. Kamala Harris, 26%, with almost $300 million at stake. You have any money on this?
No, I should have. You know what? I'm actually pissed at myself that I didn't bet after the debate. I should have done it. Yeah.
How much would you have bet?
I don't know.
Wait, after the Trump debate?
Yeah, after the debate with Kamala.
Really?
She actually went up.
Oh, she went up a lot.
Yeah, after the debate.
What'd you think? So you thought he did well?
I should have bet on. No, I didn't. I said I should have. I should have bet on it.
No, but a lot of Republicans said, "Oh man, he's in trouble after
I'll
that
always
debate."
bet on him. I'll always bet on him. He's a savage. He's an absolute animal. He's a hard worker. He's absolutely resilient.
So because I've talked to you a lot about your health regimen, which is unbelievable, and I should probably get on it soon.
I agree.
Yeah, we're the same. I think we're the same age. Yeah.
You should do it.
Yeah, no, I know.
Especially as much as you travel.
I'm gonna stop eating shit food as soon as this is over. But let me just say, Trump has also not taken your advice. I'm not alone in that.
I've been all over him.
Okay, but wait, can I say, I was the other night, we were somewhere, MSG, I think. Were you there?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're waiting backstage with Trump in his little room, and there's like Milky Ways and like all the stuff he likes, which is, by the way, I'm not judging. I like it all too. Fanta, there he is. So
I told him, listen, you got to do this. Yeah. He's like, you're too thin. You're too thin. You don't. You look better before. He tells me.
He said that?
Yeah, he says it all the time. You're too thin. I don't like too thin. I want some size. He always tells me. But listen, it works for him.
No, okay, so that's okay, but
the energy level, he's unstoppable. It works for him.
Okay, but you have made, just because of your job and your life, and I've seen your gym, your personal gym.
Right.
Like you've made a study of physiology, like how the human body works, how it's fueled, how it processes what you eat.
Right.
How does this guy on Big Macs and Milky Ways stay up for 48 hours and remain sharp? Like, how do you do that?
Big Macs, Milky Ways, and Cokes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally. So we'll be at the fight.
He's 78.
He'll sit at the fights with me all night, right? All night. You're talking like 6 hours because he shows up for the prelims. We hang out in my back room. Then we walk out and we watch the fights. It's 6 hours. So I'll ask him, "You want a water?" No. And then somebody will bring him over a Coke and he'll drink Coke. I've never seen him drink water, ever. I'm not saying he doesn't drink water. I'm just saying I've never seen it. And we're friends and I've been around him a long time and a lot. Never seen a water.
So this is now I'm really in love. But how does that work? Like, as a science matter?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at how sharp this guy is, like I'm sitting with him right now at dinner, and we're talking about the election. We're going back and forth. He hasn't slept in 48 hours. And God knows how much sleep he had before the 48. I'm sure it wasn't a lot. I'm sure it was under 4, okay? And his cognitive, his energy level, his, so we're sitting there at the table, right? It's me, him, Elon Musk, and I said, he said, "Hey," now the room's packed, and everybody wants to get to him, right?
Right.
And they got the food at the other end of the room. And he says, "Hey, let's get up and walk over there and go look at the food and see what they got." I said, "I think that's a bad idea, and they'll bring you the food, whatever you want." Nope. He wants to get up, and he wants to walk across the room, shaking everybody's hand, taking pictures, goes over, picks out his food. Then we walk all the way around back to the thing.
What did he get?
He got roast beef and Joe Stone Crab.
You said you've never, in all the years you've known, seen him drink water.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite tweets of all time. This is from October 16th, 2012. This is from the Trump Twitter archive, and I'm quoting. "The Coca-Cola company is not happy with me. That's okay. I'll still keep drinking that garbage." Now, that was 12 years ago. He's still alive.
Yes.
He's about to win the presidential election from
Right.
drinking that garbage. Like, doesn't this call into question everything you thought you knew about the human body?
Well, I think that he's a different animal because I was doing the same thing minus the Coca-Cola, and I had one foot in the grave. So and I'm 55, okay, not 78. He's a different animal. He is an absolute beast. This guy doesn't sleep. He works hard. He flies everywhere. I will send him a text at 10 o'clock in Las Vegas so that he will get the text in the morning when he wakes up, right? He texts me right back immediately every time I text him. He's up, you know. He gets pissed off when I FaceTime him, and he hates FaceTime. He's like, "You are the only one I will answer FaceTime for. I hate this," but he's always up.
I saw Kid Rock do it at dinner the other night. He was in his PJs and he answered it.
Yeah.
Shouldn't scientists study him?
Yes, they should. No, he's an absolute workhorse and a great human being. I love the guy.
Dana White, amazing. Congratulations on what looks like a victory. I hope it is.
Me too, brother.
Knock on marble. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.
Very much. So great. So, God bless you. A lot of the most fervent supporters of Trump and a lot of the smartest and most thoughtful supporters of Trump are people who didn't originally support Trump. And they didn't change their minds for reasons of expedience. J.D. Vance would be in this category. They really thought through what Trump was about. And people who've been forced to think through their views tend to have much deeper and more durable views. So into this category, along with J.D. Vance, I would put Senator Mike Lee of Utah, who is a longtime sort of libertarian, a man of principle, a constitutional scholar, suspicious of Trump, has wound up becoming one of Trump's great champions and allies, and most articulate allies in the U.S. Senate. We're really happy to have him here. Senator, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
So, again, I feel so low asking all these dumb political questions, but you've run a lot of races, and you've won them all. Where do you think this one stands?
Look, Trump's going to win this.
You really think so?
I think he's going to win it, and I think it could easily end up being an electoral landslide. It's too early to predict that right now, but it's got the makings of it. I think around the country, people are tired of the policies that have gotten us to where we are. I really, for the life of me, cannot understand how Kamala Harris has gotten away with distancing herself from her own policies. I know. Policies of the man who she championed, policies that she shares. She can't identify a single piece of daylight between her and Joe Biden. And so I think that's coming back to haunt her, and I don't think there's any way she can win. And I think Trump's going to finish very strongly tonight.
The fact that Trump is leading among young people, 18 to 29, in a bunch of different states, is just shocking to me. I think, so here you have Kamala Harris is like, she's cool, she's a wine mom, she loves abortion and dancing, she's friends with P. Diddy or whatever, she's like hip. Taylor Swift loves her. You know, you sort of, if you watch...
these are good things? Which are...
Well, not in my view, but if you watch The View, as I do every day, assiduously, you think like she's clearly the choice of like the hip young people.
Right.
And it turns out the hip young people think she's like a garbage person. Like they're not impressed at all.
Right. She's unwatchable.
Yeah.
That's why they don't let her on TV very much. You know, her big TV debut with CNN turned out to be 17 minutes of unwatchability.
Did you try to watch it?
Yeah, I did.
What'd you think?
It didn't go well. You know, I tried to think, okay, well, you know, she showed up. She spoke in what appeared to be English, but that's about where the connections ended. I don't think she connected with anyone on that. I think her whole party must have been thinking, what did we do? We just commandeered the entire electoral process within the Democratic Party to put her up without ever having won a primary. And what did we do? But it was too late to back out by then.
Well, it seems like, look, I get that they want, you know, a woman, they want someone who's at least part black, I guess, you know, they want some non-white racial category, fine. But like, okay, those are your parameters. You can still find a lot of people who can speak fluent English who are smart. Like, how do they wind up with her? Like, she doesn't meet the baseline requirement for politics, which is being able to talk. I mean, you're in politics, you tell me.
Yes. Well, look, I think it was easy for them to go to her because naturally she's vice president. She was next in line.
Of course, right.
So they went there. But I think nobody stopped to look when they were selecting her as vice president in the first place. Can she really go the distance? Does she have the policy chops to do this? Does she have the ability to communicate to where she can be the standard bearer for the Democratic Party?
Yeah.
I really don't think they fully examined that. In their unfettered exuberance at the time they chose her in 2020, they just thought, oh, it'll all work out.
But I mean, you've been around this. How long have you been in the Senate now?
14 years.
14 years, right. So you've seen a lot of the process. And isn't there a point at which you sit down with the person and like really talk, go out to dinner?
Yes.
Get a sense, can this person, you know, defend his or her views? Does he or she have real views? Like, who is this? Like, no one ever did that with her.
It is unthinkable to me that they would do that, particularly Joe Biden. Joe Biden was tying himself to her. He knew that at the time. And Tucker, before I endorse a Senate candidate, particularly if it's in a primary, it's a close primary.
You're famous for this, by the way.
I give them interview. I talk for like a couple of hours, bare minimum, because I want to make sure that I know. Now, that is a far cry from the presidency of the United States. It is unthinkable to me that I would tie my name to somebody when endorsing them in a Senate primary. But this is magnified so many hundreds of times over with the presidency. I don't know what was going on there, but I don't think there was a whole lot going on with Joe Biden to begin with.
It does make you pretty nervous about the whole infrastructure of the United States, because if they would elevate someone like Kamala Harris consistently throughout her whole career to the presidential nominee, who are they making air traffic controllers and heart surgeons, and who's running the VA? And like, there are a lot of important jobs in this country. And if the criteria are just the way you look,
right.
Totally incompetent people are in really important positions right now, which is scary.
Well, you mentioned the FAA and air traffic controllers. That's one of those areas where they have taken a very radical DEI position, where they've actually taken out some of their minimum criteria in the past, aptitudes for math and science and that sort of thing, and they've replaced it literally with demographic material of the sort that really violates on its face the Equal Protection Clause. So that's a big problem, and it's a problem that creates bad consequences. You know, when those who drafted the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause, what they had in mind was that race doesn't matter, and that government's position must always be that race doesn't matter. And so all of a sudden, when you make it matter, you're excluding all kinds of other things that do matter, and that's a problem.
It's really shocking. I mean, and you're not allowed to say she's an affirmative action hire, but Gosh, I mean, she really is. Like, she's
Well,
the definition of it.
But the reason that's a fair observation here is that Joe Biden himself told us that.
Oh, I know.
Joe Biden told us that was her qualification. Just like he did with Ketanji Brown Jackson. He said, I'm going to pick someone who is of this gender and of this race. That is really insulting to the person he picks.
It's unbelievable. So let me just ask you one last question. I don't know the answer to this, and maybe you will. This is a Daily Mail piece, just came out this afternoon. U.S. to test hypersonic nuclear missile tonight, just hours after election polls close amid growing World War III fears. What the hell is that?
I don't know. That seems like a really odd choice. I don't know why November 5th would have to be the day when that
It's an
particular test would
intercontinental
occur.
ballistic missile, the Minuteman II, scheduled to blast off between 11:01 p.m. and 5:01 a.m. from California's Vandenberg Space Force Base. Why would you have a nuclear missile test on the same day as a presidential election?
Look, let me put the most favorable spin on this that I possibly can. The most favorable spin I can put on that one is that some pinheads in the Pentagon are totally tone deaf on political matters and didn't have the election in mind when they did this. If that's the case, that's really weird. I don't like this at all. I think there are 364 other days they could have chosen for this year. Why election day? Why the night after the entire country's just voted? I think that's really bizarre.
Well, it is bizarre. It is bizarre.
Maybe you can get them to change it. Yeah, give them a call, Tucker. They'll listen to you.
Senator Mike Lee of Utah, thank you. You've been such an incredible, you just spoke on Trump's behalf. I thought you gave one of the best. Was that at Madison Square Garden?
That was in Arizona.
Arizona, sorry.
Yes,
God,
yes,
I've been on the road
yeah.
too much. It was in Arizona. Well, you're amazing.
It was a big arena.
No, it was a big arena. Sorry, it's been a blur of big arenas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great
Good
to
to
see
be with you. Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you. So when historians look back on this campaign, and presumably books will be written about it, and probably the first 6 or 7 of them will be completely dishonest, but when the distance has grown sufficient that we can be honest about what happened, I think we will understand that the endorsement of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., of Donald Trump, in this campaign, late in this campaign, was a sea change in American politics. Not just a benefit to Trump at the time, but a sign of a true realignment, long overdue, in the parties. And I think it's really obvious. I wish more people would say it. Bobby Kennedy joins us now. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
So do you have, I mean, you've been right in the middle of it. You've campaigned so hard for Trump that was a little stunning, actually. I think you were working every bit as hard on his behalf as you were on your own behalf, which is amazing. But have you had any time to think about what this means? You are campaigning for Donald Trump. It looks like he's likely to win, says the New York Times. Like, what does this mean for American politics going forward?
He's unlike any politician that we've seen in American history. Maybe the one comparison that I would make would be Andrew Jackson.
Yes.
Because Andrew Jackson came in without any money or backing from powerful interests. Everybody was against him, but he was truly a populist candidate. And he came in and did things that nobody thought was possible, to challenge the banks.
Yes.
And dismantle the banks, and to install a lot of people who were kind of heretics in public office. And a lot of people think that of Trump as a conventional politician because the last time around he initially appointed a lot of very conventional people, of kind of lobbyists, et cetera.
Yeah.
People don't remember almost his entire cabinet was gone within 2 years.
Yes.
As he learned to govern, and he wants to do, he will do what he wants to do. And I spent 2 days with him recently, and he was saying things that were kind of shocking to me. He was saying things like that, the kind of change, the level of change that he wants to make in our government, I think is going to be unprecedented. And
shocking to you in a good way?
Yeah, in a good way. But just, that it's so impolitic. He's an impolitic guy. And I think he's a guy that does what he wants to do.
Well, can
And
I give you an
think
example?
he wants a revolution, and I think he's going to get one.
This is a tweet from you. I'm noticing this 23.5 million views. Let me just read your tweet back to you. On January 20th, the Trump White House will advise all U.S. water systems to remove fluoride from public water, period. Fluoride is an industrial waste associated with arthritis, bone fractures, bone cancer, IQ loss, neurodevelopmental disorders, and thyroid disease. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump want to make America healthy again. I mean, that just caused, 23.5 million people thought it was pretty great. The news media hated it. Is that part of what you're talking about?
It's interesting because there was a case that was handed down on October 4th on fluoride, and it was an Obama-appointed judge, a federal judge, and it was brought to challenge EPA for never having done safety studies. Fluoride was put in the water.
No way.
Yeah, fluoride was put in the water in the 1940s, and it was put in the water to stop tooth decay.
Yes.
But now it's recognized that most of our mouthwashes and toothpastes have fluoride in them, and you don't need fluoride in the water. And it's a very inefficient way of preventing tooth decay because you're getting it in people's blood, and that's how it's exposing the teeth. And as it turns out, fluoride is very, very dangerous. It causes IQ loss. We know, they haven't done a lot of studies that they should have done, but there are extensive studies that show if you put fluoride in water at double the rate that EPA now allows, that is in all of our water systems that use it in this country, that it causes dramatic IQ loss in children and particularly in unborn fetuses. It also causes bone cancer, and we had an explosion of bone cancer beginning in the 1940s. It causes arthritis, and it causes the deterioration of bones, bone fractures, and it causes thyroid injuries. It also calcifies the pineal gland of the human brain, which is the part of our brain that actually creates our spiritual feelings. And so it's just something. Yeah, it's something that that you wouldn't want in a water supply. And it's it's going to have to be taken out anyway because of this court case, but the EPA will drag its feet and take 10 years or 15 years to do it.
This is so shocking to me because, being against fluoride in the water was the single most reliable marker of mental illness, according to the U.S. media, for like 60 years.
Well, it was the subject of a conspiracy theory that was being put in our water by communists in order to sap the vigor from the American people. And as it turns out, it actually, the health injuries that were predicted for it were not exactly, but there are profound health injuries, and it's just insane to have it in our water. It's absolutely insane.
So why would EPA fight the removal of it?
CDC says it's one of the 10 greatest health introductions of any, or inventions of any in the 20th century. And so they've stuck their neck. It's like everything else that they do. They stick their neck out on something. They promote it to the American public, and then they don't want to dial it back. They do not want to admit that they made a mistake. And they do this with a lot of products. Once they approve them, they're going to fight to keep them there. But it's one of the easiest things you can do to start restoring American health is just get the fluoride out of the water. You're going to have higher IQ children. You're going to have less bone cancer, less.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
So here's something else that you can do, which should not be controversial. You took, whatever. Anyone who questions vaccines gets attacked. I don't even want to bring up the topic with you. You spent a lot of time debating it. I'm not going to ask you to again. But the question of whether any product should have blanket liability from lawsuits.
Yeah, a liability shield.
A liability shield. I don't understand that. Like if I have a product, nicotine pouches, I can't get the Congress to require every American to use these, fire people who don't use them, and then get blanket shield from lawsuit. Like that's so crazy that any pharma company has a blanket shield from lawsuits for any product that it sells. Can that be fixed?
Well, that, is done by statutes.
Yes.
There's a 1986 law that gave the vaccine companies a liability shield. And
Yes.
the problem is with that, the reason that happened, Tucker, when I was a kid, there were 3 vaccines. And my kids now were required to take 72 vaccines. And they've just added, I think, another 6 vaccines, the COVID vaccines and flu vaccines, to the schedule. In the early 70s, they added a vaccine called the diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis vaccine. An NIH study showed that vaccine, that particular vaccine, which has been withdrawn in America, we still give it to African children, causes death or profound brain injuries in 1 out of every 300 kids who gets it. So they took it off the market, but Wyeth, which is now Pfizer, went to the Reagan White House and told Reagan, look, we're losing $20 in downstream liability for every dollar that we're collecting in revenue. And unless you give us a liability shield, we're going to stop making all vaccines. And Reagan actually said to them sensibly, and it wasn't just Reagan. My uncle Ted Kennedy was the head of the Senate committee at that time that went along with this very reluctantly. Reagan was very reluctant. He said to the vaccine companies, why don't you make them safe?
Good question.
Right. Wyeth said, because vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. And that phrase is actually in the preamble of the statute. And it's in the Brucewitz decision, which is the Supreme Court decision that upheld the statute. Now, I just want to make this clear. I don't want to take vaccines away from people.
Well, right.
I don't want to impose my choices on the American public.
understand.
If vaccines are working for you, you ought to be able to get them. And I'll make sure that that happens. But people should have informed choice. So they should have good science that tells them the costs and the benefits of these products, and particularly since they're being ordered to use them. 76 million kids a year are required to use them. And they're healthy children. So it's the only medical product that's given to healthy people. You want a product like that to be extra solid, to make sure there's no risk, because you can take, there's certain risks that you'll take if you're sick to get better.
Of course.
But if you're not sick, and you shouldn't be required to take a product unless it is ironclad, unless you know what all the costs and benefits are. And the problem with vaccines is that they were originally introduced by the Public Health Service, which is one of the 5 uniform military services. That's why there's a Surgeon General. And the Public Health Service introduced them and pushed them as a national security defense against biological attacks on our country. So they wanted to make sure that if the Russians attacked us with anthrax or with some other biological agent, they could quickly formulate a vaccine and then deploy it to 220 million American civilians without regulatory impediments. A normal medical product takes about 8 years to get to market because it has to go through double-blind, placebo-controlled trials, and you need to see long-term effects. There are many effects from every medical product that have long diagnostic horizons, long incubation periods. They didn't want to go through that because they said it's going to be a national emergency. So instead of calling it a medicine, we're going to call it a biologic, and we're going to exempt biologics from pre-licensing safety studies. So there's no vaccine on that schedule, that's 72 vaccines, that has ever gone through a pre-licensing safety study, placebo-controlled trial against a real placebo. And that's wrong because that means that nobody knows what the risk profiles are on these products. And nobody can tell you whether that product is averting more problems than it's causing. And what I will do, if I'm given this job in the White House, is I'll make sure that those studies get done, that there are people on the panels that approve these products that are not loaded with conflicts of interest. So it's real science by disinterested people.
Right.
And that doctors and patients and Americans know exactly what the costs and benefits of every vaccine are and can make a rational decision.
God bless you for that. When you say, if I'm given this job, can you be, for people who aren't following this, can you be more specific about what job you're talking about?
President Trump has asked me he's asked me to do 3 things. He's asked me, in terms of the public health agencies, He's asked me, number one, to get rid of the corruption, rid of the conflicts, the agency capture phenomena that has turned these public health agencies away from public health. And their principal objective now is to advance the mercantile interests of the pharmaceutical companies.
Yes.
And he wants to get rid, number one, get rid of the corruption. Number two, return these agencies to the gold standard scientific research and evidence-based research, empirically based science that when you and I were kids, they were famous for around the world. They've lost that reputation now because they've been captured by industry. And then number three, to end the chronic disease epidemic. And President Trump has told me he wants to see concrete, measurable results within 2 years. And I've promised him that I can do that. Now, whether that means as an HHS secretary or whether it means as a health czar within the White House, we haven't figured out yet. But one way or another, we are going to end the chronic disease epidemic.
The reason that I think that you will be given the authority to do that is because I've been at a bunch of different public events with you over the past couple of months, and the reception that you receive from Trump's voters is so shocking to me, second only to Trump himself. But all the people I've seen with Trump, you get the biggest response from Republican voters. It's so, is that shocking to you?
Well, it is shocking. And, I was just out here.
I mean, your name is Bobby Kennedy, and they love you.
Well, there's been a complete inversion between the Democratic and Republican Party. When I was a kid, the Democratic Party was the party of peace. Now it's the party of war. It's the party of Dick Cheney, John Bolton, the military-industrial complex, the Ukraine war. They own it. It was the party of constitutional rights. Now it's the party of surveillance and censorship and the weaponization of the federal law enforcement agencies against American democracy. It was the party that stood up for working people, for poor people, for labor unions. And today, it is the party of big pharma, Wall Street, big tech, big ag, the military-industrial complex, big data, and Wall Street, and it is also the party that's completely abandoned the working class base in this country. You look at the labor unions with Sean O'Brien, who's the head of the biggest union in our country, and who's a beautiful man, incredible man,
excellent guy. I agree.
He's an insurgent. He came out of Boston. He overthrew the old Hoffa legatees of the Teamsters, and he is the most popular president that they've had in generations. And almost 70%, I think 65% of Teamsters are Trumpers. This is true in labor unions across the country. The rank and file, the leaders of the union are often still Democrat. The rank and file are overwhelmingly Republican. And that was not true when I was a kid. And, one of the interesting things, when I was a kid, the Republican Party was the party that had all the money. Yeah. Because they had all the big corporations on their side.
The Country Club Party.
When I was a kid, 70%, in 1980, when I ran part of my Uncle Ted's presidential campaign, 70% of the wealth in this country was owned by Republicans. 30% was owned by Democrats. In 2020, 70% of the wealth in this country was owned by Democrats and 30% Republicans. So you've had this complete inversion of the two parties. And I'll give you another example. My Uncle Ted Kennedy wrote Title IX. The Democratic Party, one of the core issues was women's sports. And today, the Democratic Party is the party that is dismantling women's sports. Yes. I read that there have been now, I think, over 2,000 or 3,000 medals that have been given to male athletes playing women's sports. So those are medals that did not go to women who should be getting them. I have a niece, and her brother, her twin brother Jackson. My niece Zoe is at Boston College. She's on the softball team at Boston College. She's a full scholarship, and she's one of the best players on the team. And when she was growing up, all of her siblings would come to Cape Cod in the summer, and they'd play with, all their Kennedy cousins. And I took their family skiing during the winter, but she wouldn't come because she had to stay at home and practice her sport because her whole life trajectory was making sure she got a college scholarship. And that was how she was going to define, she planned her life around it. It would seem really unfair if a boy could walk off a softball field or a baseball field at Boston College, walk onto the women's softball team and take her spot. And that, it seems weird that the Democrats are urging us to allow that to happen, but that's exactly what's happening, and nobody can argue with it.
But did you, I'm looking at the betting markets now with almost $300 million at stake, Donald Trump is the choice of 74% predicting he's going to win. Seems significant. If someone had asked you like at dinner 10 years ago, do you think at some point Bobby Kennedy will change the Republican Party?
I would have bet $1 million. A very, very good odds for somebody. So yeah, even a year ago, this would have been unimaginable for me to be here tonight.
Why didn't the Kamala Harris campaign, I mean, you suspended your campaign. Why didn't, I don't understand. You had demonstrated broad popularity, particularly with young people, and with politically agnostic people who could kind of go either direction. Why didn't they call you and say, what can we do to bring you into our campaign?
Well, I mean, and this is another sort of interesting feature of this whole trend. The Democratic Party that I grew up with was the party that was fighting the party of Robert Kennedy and John Kennedy and Martin Luther King was fighting to make sure every American could vote for whatever candidate they wanted to vote for. And the Democratic Party today is the Democratic Party that has abandoned democracy. And also, that the censorship angle, what they're doing with censorship of saying the government ought to be the arbiter of what's misinformation or disinformation. And the word misinformation is just a euphemism. It has nothing to do with factual accuracy, as you know. It's just a euphemism for anything that challenges government orthodoxies. And so they've lost, my uncle said, a nation or government that wants to silence debate is a government that's lost faith in the people. So they've lost faith in the demos, the people, and including having to abolish elections. So during the primary, they wouldn't let me run an election against Joe Biden. They literally canceled the primaries in many of the states. They moved the New Hampshire primary, which was the primary that I was very strong in. They actually adopted 60 rules, and one of those rules was to illustrate the absurdity, the kind of Orwellian absurdity that I found myself confronting. They adopted a rule that said that after I was already doing very well in New Hampshire, that any Democratic Party candidate that stepped foot into the state of New Hampshire could not win any delegates there, no matter how many votes they won. So they were rigging the party to make sure that they could protect the president who was cognitively impaired. And they made sure he didn't debate anybody. I was winning in all these demographics. I was beating both candidates, both Trump and Biden, in people and Americans under 35. I was beating them in the battleground states. In Americans under 45, I was beating them with independent voters. In head-to-head races, I was beating both candidates. And so I could have I could have won the election for the Democrats if they had allowed me to run. I'm not saying I'm the only one. There are probably many candidates that could have outperformed Joe Biden, but they wouldn't let us run. And then they did, when they had the debate and it was exposed to the world what they knew inside the White House. President Biden had these severe, debilitating cognitive deficits. He had already won technically the primaries that they did have. But they just performed a palace coup against them. We don't even know how it happened. And then they picked a candidate who never got a single vote. So you had this democracy-free primary process, and the Democratic Party defense of it was extraordinary. One of the great moments of this campaign for me, the television moments, was when Chris Cuomo was standing on the floor of the Democratic convention, and he pointed up to the upper decks with the owners' boxes on that, upper rim. And he said, those are the people that are running this party and making these choices. Those are the people that are, and we don't know. Nobody knows who they are. They're the billion-dollar Democratic donors. And, and so they abolished democracy, and they chose a candidate who has not been a good candidate, a candidate who does not seem to be able to talk off script. The problem that brings up is who's writing the scripts for it. And at the Democratic convention, it was the neocons. The speech that she gave was the most undemocratic speech I've ever heard at a Democratic convention. It was a speech all about this belligerent, pugnacious speech about America being the policeman of the world and, dominating the world and running the world. And right before her, immediately before her, they had a CIA former director speak, which, that was anathema to the Democratic Party that I grew up with. So who is writing her scripts, and then who will be writing her scripts if she gets into the White House? Who will be writing? She can't do conversations like this. She's not going to be able to do conversations with world leaders. She needs a script for everything she does. And who is going to be doing that? It's going to be, as my son Connor says, a bunch of anonymous men in lanyards, men and women in lanyards who are, who we don't know, who, if you sneak into the Oval Office at 2:00 in the morning, there's a guy there with his feet up on the desk and say, who you've never seen, who's like the real president of the United States, and you don't know who it is. We need somebody who's willing to stand up to the military-industrial complex for these big institutions. Let me say one other thing. When my uncle was president, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, he had the entire intelligence apparatus and the military brass telling him, you got to bomb Cuba. You got to bomb. There's 64 missiles in Cuba, and you got to bomb each one of those. My uncle said to them, well, how many men is that going to kill? And they said, well, there's 500 guys at each of those sites who are manning the sites. My uncle said, are those Russians or are they Cubans? And they said, we think they're probably Russians, but we don't know. My uncle said, if I kill all those Russians, isn't Khrushchev going to have to go into Berlin? And we're in World War III. And they said, we don't think he has the guts to do it. And that was their logic. And my uncle, had a vote of his ExComm committee, which is 13 people, including my father and Bob McNamara, who were making the decision. And they voted 8-6 to bomb. This was the last day. And my uncle said, the sixes have it. In other words, he was making the decision. He would take advice from them. When I was on the plane the other day with President Trump, we were talking about the Mideast, and he took a piece of paper and he drew on it a map of the Mideast with all the nations on it, which most Americans couldn't do.
No.
And then he wrote in each country the troop strength. And he was particularly looking at the border between Syria and Turkey, and he said, we have 500 men on the border of Syria and Turkey, and a little, encampment that was bombed. And he said, there's 750,000 troops in Turkey. There's 250,000 in Syria. If they go up against each other, we're in the middle. And he said to his generals, what's going to happen to those 500 men? And his general said to him, they're going to be cannon fodder. And he said, get them out. So we want a president who has that knowledge. He's going to ask those rational questions and then is going to make good decisions for the American public.
Make sure I got this right. Trump on the plane the other day drew a map of the Mideast.
He drew a map of the Mideast.
An accurate map.
Yeah, an accurate map of the Mideast.
With troop strength.
Yes, with troop strength in each of the nations. So, I saw that, and it reminded me of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I know Kamala Harris could not do that. I've seen her interviews explaining Ukraine war, and they're sophomoric. So, and I don't want to say bad things about people. But, she just does not have any idea about the uses of power. she does not have the capacity to sign up to a military and intelligence apparatus that wants this country in perpetual war. And I don't think that, and I do believe when Trump says that she's going to get us into nuclear war, they're not talking to the Russians. She will never have a conversation with Putin, and Biden won't either.
It's crazy.
And Trump, Trump, the Democrats all criticize Trump because he went and talked to Kim Jong-un and he talked to Putin. They say, oh, he loves dictators. No, my uncle was in the same situation where the CIA had no idea what was happening in Moscow. And, they had all of their spies had been killed. And they just said, here's the way they think. My uncle was saying, how do you know that? They said it's a monolith. And my uncle said, it couldn't be a monolith. It has to be like Boston politics where they're all trying to stab each other in the back. And the CIA had no idea. So my uncle installed a hotline in the White House and a hotline in our house at the Cape. The wires of it are still coming out of the wall of my brother's house, red wires. So he could pick up the phone and talk to Khrushchev 24 hours a day. And then they started corresponding with each other. They sent 26 letters back and forth. They were smuggled by a GRU spy called Georgy Bolshoi, who my uncle trusted and Khrushchev trusted because they didn't want to involve the military-industrial complex of the intelligence.
Exactly.
Those guys are still there. They still want perpetual war. And we need a president who's going to make up his own mind about things and who is going to challenge his own military advisors, people like Tony Blinken and Jake Sullivan and the people who want to, and Victoria Nuland, the people who want to keep us in a perpetual war and who are going to get us into a nuclear war.
Well, I think we may get one. The New York Times this is breaking right now, is estimating, again, it's the New York Times, who knows, but that Trump will win the popular vote. They're saying he is more likely than Kamala Harris to win the popular vote as of right now. I don't think a Republican has won the popular vote since 2004. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Since the post 9/11 election, George W. Bush. But it's 20 years, never happened.
Yeah.
So if that happened, you were a figure out of history. Now, very obviously, and I appreciate everything you've done, and I can't wait to see what you.
Well, I appreciate what you've done,
I
Tucker.
haven't done much. I'm not going to make America healthy again, but I think you are. So thank you.
We'll
Robert
do it
Kennedy.
together. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker.
Amazing. So we have, whined pretty nonstop for the past, I have for the past 10 years about the loathsome state of the American media. Doesn't mean everyone in the media is loathsome. There are a few honest voices. Bye, guys. See ya. And Miranda Devine is at the top of the list. Miranda Devine of the New York Post, who single-handedly took on the censorship state in 2020 with the Hunter Biden laptop story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tucker.
Looks like Trump's going to win.
Well, it certainly feels like that in the ballroom where Trump came in at about 8:45 to a huge, ovation from the crowd.
Ballroom here?
The ballroom here at Mar-a-Lago.
I've been stuck in this little room. I have no idea what's
Great
going on.
food. There's sushi
Is
and
that
beef
true?
Wellington and
Look at what we're missing,
sea
Benno.
bass. I mean, it's great food. Lots of champagne flowing. And he's sitting there. He's got Dana White next to him. And then on the other side of Dana White is Elon Musk. And everyone's chatting very companionably. But Trump keeps on turning around because CNN's on the big screen behind him. And all he wants to see is Jake Tapper's sad face. And Jake Tapper and all the CNN people are looking miserable, actually, as the
really?
night's going on.
Oh, I was on the
fair
set at
thoughts for them.
CNN in 2000 when Bush won.
Yeah.
Or when Gore didn't win, more precisely. And I remember the sadness then. It's
Yes.
so nice to see they haven't changed.
We should be kind to them.
So the okay, what there he is. There is that the aforementioned CNN anchor looking very, very upset.
Grim and dour.
Very wearing a
Yes.
vest. You don't see that very often. So Trump in the betting markets now 86%, $304 million on the line. Who will win the presidential election? 86% of bettors
Wow.
believe Donald Trump. Doesn't mean he's going to win, but it means that he seems to be winning.
But that's moved enormously
It has
today.
moved.
Yeah.
So where are we in Pennsylvania? Ben, bring that up a little bit more. Trump is ahead, it looks like. Ooh.
Wow, that's quick.
Sizably ahead with 54% of votes counted.
That's flipped in the last hour.
Yeah, it has. But it's what are we? 2 hours after polls closed in Pennsylvania,
And postal votes,
and they
they
can't make a
count
call.
first. And
2 hours and 23 minutes
Yeah.
after they closed. It really, I mean, since you're from a foreign country, long time American, but from abroad, you have international perspective. The way that our votes are counted does seem like a national shame.
Crazy, I know.
Okay, it is, right?
It really is.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, Australia's a tiny country, but you know the result within a few hours. Same with the UK, same with Europe. I mean, France does not allow mail-in voting or machines.
Yes.
They have a very clean system. In the UK, they brought in voter ID just a couple of years
Florida,
ago.
which has, I think, a population roughly the size of Australia's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can do it.
They call it in 1 minute.
Yeah. Right.
So if you have a state that doesn't even try to call it within a few days, what do you have? I mean, what do you have? What are you looking at?
I mean, this is the country that sent man to the moon.
Right.
Surely.
Supposedly. No, I'm sure we did. I guess, but certainly there's a lot of advanced technology in the United States.
Well, Elon Musk just has a rocket that can catch itself on its way home.
Right.
So surely we can make sure that the voting system is not so antiquated.
So can you just wax lyrical a little bit about Donald Trump's story arc? So let's say you're writing this novel about Donald Trump, and here you have a guy who, is the darling of the media world. He's of course he's the highest rated person in television. Goes into politics, he's hated, called a racist, loses, and then he comes back and wins with a larger percentage of the non-white vote than any Republican ever.
Yeah.
This racist, like, what are we? What are we watching here? I've never seen a redemption story like this.
Well, let's hope that you're not jumping the gun. But yeah, I mean, that's the way it looks. If you're writing a novel, and I think...
Well, look, even if Trump loses, he's been outspent 3-1.
Yeah.
He's been arrested. He's
demonized,
been,
villainized.
He's had his mugshot taken.
He's
more
had
than
the
once.
entire media establishment
Right.
against him. The entire blob, the CIA, the FBI, they've all been against him. It's the most incredible comeback story. And, he could have slinked off after 2020 and had a comfortable life and probably ingratiated himself back with the lefties. But he didn't. He chose to go the difficult route.
And he's ahead as of right now. Could change, but in Wisconsin, amazing. It's very, very tight, but he's ahead.
I think that assassination attempt in Butler where he stood up and did fight. I think that it certainly was the galvanizing reason for Elon Musk to come out of the shadows.
Yes, within minutes.
And I think Joe Rogan as well. I think a lot of men particularly, but women as well, just recognize there is a once-in-a-lifetime courage and leadership, like a Genghis Khan style leadership. Seriously.
With your children, but yes, same idea.
But you don't have that sort of historical figure come to you very often, and the country's in dire need of a figure like that. So as repellent as many Americans find him, I think enough Americans love him. Looks like the majority. I mean, he may even win the popular vote. What a repudiation of the New York Times and CNN and the rest of them who have treated him as if they've called him a Nazi.
Well, will it be read that way? So Trump, I mean, you spent your life in newsrooms. Your father was a well-known journalist. I mean, you've really been in this business your whole life. What's their so let's say Trump wins. Let's say he wins the popular vote. Let's say he wins a majority or close to of Hispanic voters, this famous racist, Mr. Taco Bowl. Like, what do they make of that? Like, what's their explanation for it? Does it occasion any kind of self-reflection at all?
It would if they were actually journalists and not just propaganda artists who are being controlled by other forces, who will fight Trump and his people every step of the way. We're just talking about big pharma. You just had Bobby Kennedy on. Big pharma, big agriculture. They will be out to do whatever they can to stop him. We've also got the CIA, the FBI, etc. So they control these newsrooms. These newsrooms kind of take their marching orders from these sort of malign influences. I don't think they're
You think so? So here, I'm playing pantomime with you. I know what you're saying is true because I've seen it. I don't think your average person. Oh, he won Iowa. There he's Donald Trump wins Iowa.
Well, of course.
Well, no, I mean he was.
I know. What about
Much watched poll from Iowa points to Harris
the
landslide.
gold standard poll? Annie Seltzer. You know, how did that happen? She never gets it wrong. She's just magnificent. Haha, she was wrong. Fancy that.
But Iowa? I mean,
know.
I immediately called a friend of mine who's a political organizer in Iowa, and I said, I'm not from Iowa. To put it mildly, so I don't know. Maybe it's my friend was what? And this is like an actual political person in Iowa. That's insane. But that poll was taken seriously.
Yeah. You know, Robert Cahaley from Trafalgar
Yeah.
said a really interesting thing the other night, which was that where there used to be the shy Trump voter, now there's the fearful Trump voter. They're afraid of government retribution and knock on
Right.
the door,
That's right.
being cancelled. So they really are not going to tell pollsters, even as beloved and brilliant as Ann Seltzer, the truth.
You are so good. I'm so glad you're still in the media. I think the fact that you grew up in it gives you a different perspective because you once told me that you remember your dad like at the table talking about it, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you
of
grew up
course.
in it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Ink in the blood.
you remember what it used to be. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you have that spirit that used to animate all journalists.
Well,
which
and
is-
you have it too because your father is.
Yeah, no, I grew up in it also. No, I mean, I remember when, journalists were like amazing guys and like you respected that they
swashbuckling
were
adventurers.
100%.
Yeah. They went to war. They jumped out of planes. Like, they
100%.
did dangerous things.
yes.
They didn't just sit behind a keyboard in a New York newsroom snarking at people. They were real men and women.
I
There
remember
weren't
it.
that many women, but
There
the
weren't.
ones that were Lois Lane.
Pretty rough.
Yeah.
So what happens to, you said the media will spend not a moment reflecting on how they got
Well,
it wrong.
did they do it in
No, they didn't.
2016?
You're absolutely
No.
right. But what happens to the malign forces that you described in Washington, the intel agencies who you butted up against, who tried to shut your story down, famously the 51 former intel officials, all of whom retained security clearances. Really, they were still working for the intel agencies.
Yeah.
But people like that, like, when are they ever going to be held to account for what they did?
I think it's a long-term project. It's going to be more than 4 years, but with any luck, if this is a resounding landslide or resounding victory for Donald Trump, he's really set in place 4 years for himself and then another 8 years for J.D. Vance or whoever is the heir apparent. This is the MAGA movement has taken over the conservative side of politics, and it's no longer going to be the Bushies and the Cheneys and business as usual, where everyone is cozy as the uni party and the malign forces get their way.
It's just incredible. Well, I'm just grateful that you've decided, for whatever reason, to stay in journalism.
Of course. What else would I do?
I tried to convince my kids to go into it. That's disgusting. But
I convinced my kids not to.
I
think it's hard
given up,
for
and
young
I'm
people.
glad they're not in it, but you do need decent, honest, tough people with self-respect in it, and you're one of the few. So
Thank you.
I mean it. Thank you very much, Miranda
Thanks
Devine.
so much.
So Trump really shouldn't be here. He should be in prison. And if the plan had unfolded as they wanted it to, he would not be standing for election tonight. He would be behind bars. He's been charged with all kinds of fake crimes. One of the reasons he's not behind bars, one of the reasons he's almost at 200 electoral votes as of 10:32 Eastern, is Alina Habba, who is one of his lawyers, by far the most famous, and I can say very smart. She joins us now. Did you ever think
Wait,
that...
don't you mean unintelligent, stupid, unintelligent, all those things Mark Cuban called us?
Mark Cuban.
Screw Mark
Somebody
Cuban.
said, I think it was Elon the other night, Mark Cuban. I knew Mark Cuban. I also know Rachel Maddow.
Yeah.
Worked with her. He does look so much like Rachel Maddow now. Like, what
By
is
the way,
that?
it's the glasses. I'm debating, is it Rachel Maddow? Is he trying to be on The View? I can't figure it
But
out.
he
Tucker.
does seem like he's undergoing some physiological
Maybe it's a
changes.
transition.
No, honestly, it looks that way.
Perhaps.
What is that?
Perhaps, I could represent him through that. Maybe I could get the taxpayer liberal dollars. I'm here for you, Mark. Whatever you need. This intelligent woman will help you transition on taxpayer dollars under the Kamala Harris regime. I'm here for it.
I remember we had dinner at the beginning of this whole drama that you've been through, and I remember thinking, boy, you're signing up for a lot of drama.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I mean, looking
It's
back,
a blessing. It's been a blessing.
really?
Yes, I feel that way.
How?
I feel this was God's plan. I feel grateful, honestly. I do. I think the more they hit me, the more I know I have a voice. And
Yes.
President Trump's given me a voice. Nobody should know who President Trump's lawyer was.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about it. And I
Yeah.
was like, hey, Tucker, I'll come on your show. We don't do lawyers. I'm like, yeah, but, and then it became that I wasn't just a lawyer. That's because of President Trump. So the man that they tell you has torn down women has given me a platform.
course.
And I'm a first generation American girl. I was not a straight A student. I didn't go to Harvard.
I think Trump likes women better. I've always.
You
thought
know
that.
what I know? You know what? Yeah, for sure. Listen, the truth of the matter is I'm here for such a time as this, but I'm so honored. And I feel like no matter what happens, we laid it all on the field and we fought so hard. He should have been in jail according to them. He should have been dead according to him.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And we crushed it, Tucker. I mean, no matter what, you can't say we didn't crush it.
You certainly did.
Yeah.
And it was like a swarm of bees at one point.
Yeah,
There were
for sure.
so many different filings against him. I couldn't even keep track of it.
Indictments, raids. When I signed up to work with President Trump, I told him in the interview, I had interviewed with him and Eric Trump, who you know well, and the GC of the Trump Organization. And I had said to them, sir, I'm really happy to represent you as an attorney, but I will not get involved in politics. Not happening. A month later, I sued Hillary Clinton. So here we are. He always gets the last
And you think
word.
it's, I mean, you've enjoyed it.
I honestly feel it's a blessing. All the hit pieces, all the tormenting, The View, Jimmy Kimmel, Mark Cuban, bring it on. Bring it on,
Oh,
baby.
did Jimmy Kimmel attack you?
Always. Jimmy Kimmel many times. SNL 2 weeks in a row. That's
Gee,
a badge of
whatever
honor.
happened to Jimmy Kimmel was like a pretty.
Does
I don't know,
anybody
normal
watch it? I don't know.
No one watches.
I
I mean, his
feel-
career ended, but
Yeah.
how is he so controlled? Like, what do they have on Jimmy
Fear.
Kimmel?
You know, maybe he was at Diddy's Island, Epstein's Island. I'm sure. You know,
Something's going
You know what
on.
we
I
don't
mean-
need to do, Tucker? This is what I said at the rally. I said this, one of my second to last rallies, I said, you will not see people from Diddy's parties or Epstein's Island on this stage. So when I say it's a blessing, because I have something called morality, which
Yeah.
is lacking, and God is number one to me, not Trump, nothing else. God is
Yes.
number one. So for me, my faith, my family, that's why I'm here. And my children, we can't live through this kind of culture that they're creating, this fear of sending my kids to school. I can't have that. I can't have that. I got to switch my kids from school because my daughter's school's so woke. I can't take it.
Yeah.
I can't have that. You have kids.
You shouldn't take it.
I'm not going to take it.
Good.
And I'm not going to take it not only for me, but for your kids, for everybody's kids. So it's a blessing.
My kids are out of it, thank heaven. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I would not send my
Homeschooling.
children. I would not send my children
Yeah.
to private or public school right now if I had to do it.
Don't
again.
trust the
Thank
system.
God. No. Oh, Alina Habba, congratulations. No matter what happens, you.
I don't know
mean,
about
you have
that.
done your part and have been victorious. And I don't know if anyone would have bet on you. You know.
Nobody was betting on me.
couple
Tucker.
years
Let's be
ago,
honest,
so-
Tuck. You weren't betting on me. Listen, the truth.
Oh, I thought I was secretly betting on you.
You know what it is? I was every stigma that they wanted to say was dumb, stupid. She looks a certain way. She can't be good.
Yeah.
She must be. It's because of her looks. It's because of this. It's because of that. And the words I want to say right now are not very Catholic.
No, no,
but
I know what you mean.
big F you. Big F you tonight.
Oh,
F you, all of you.
it's a nice feeling. Yeah,
It's a
that's-
good feeling.
That's the
Tucker.
party I
Guess
I
what?
vote
No
for.
matter what, we're on the party of F you.
Alina, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Great to see you.
Good to see you. Let's
Thank
win,
you.
Tuck.
Oh,
Let's
it
win.
looks like, yeah,
We're
it looks
looking
like, I
good.
mean, I don't know. We're still in betting markets. We've got Eric Trump
That's
is
it.
standing right there
That's
who
how
may
it
have
goes.
the
That's how it
brand new
goes.
numbers. Do you have the
Eric
brand new
Trump,
numbers?
my biggest, by the way, tougher client than Donald Trump. True story. Tougher client than Donald Trump
Is
is
that
Eric
true?
Trump. It's true. He is not Donald Trump is not the tough one. It's Eric.
No, I believe that.
It's true.
I believe that.
It's true.
He's
He
back
resents
at
it.
HQ
He
going through
resents
the
it.
contracts.
On that note, bye-bye. I want my bills paid. See you guys.
See ya.
Thank you.
So, Eric, thank you very much for doing this. I've been stuck in this seat for so long. I don't know exactly what's going on out there. What is going on?
What is going on?
Yeah.
This is like the greatest, for me, vindication of everything that we've dealt with for the last 9 years. So right now we're looking great in Georgia. We're looking great in North Carolina. I think they call both the states in the next 10, 15 minutes. And then I think our internal numbers show us winning Pennsylvania. And our internal numbers show us winning Wisconsin, right? So you have that before you get out to Arizona and Nevada, which I think we're going to win both of those.
So if that comes true, so if you got Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania,
It's over.
It is
I
right.
mean, if you get Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, it's over. If you get Wisconsin, it's icing on the cake. If you get Nevada and Arizona, it's like, even better. And so Tucker, they put us through hell. I mean,
So this actually could end tonight.
oh, absolutely, and it could end sooner. Sooner than we otherwise think. And oftentimes, and we see a lot of the raw data coming in behind the scenes, and oftentimes the news networks will actually kind of hold it back for a while because they want to.
Oh wow! I'm sorry to interrupt. Just to give our audience some perspective, in case you're not following this, 84% counted in North Carolina. They're saying it's too early to call, but Trump is at 51. I mean, it's not.
I mean, just for context, the New York Times has him at 83% chance of winning as of a second ago, and it's going up every few minutes. And Tucker, the reason I say that, I'm not a boastful guy.
Dude, it's only 1040. This is crazy.
They've put us through freaking hell over the last 9 years. They've done everything to our family that you could possibly do. To have them go after him, to have them try and impeach him, to have them make up the slurs and the dossiers, literally send me 111 subpoenas. I'm the most subpoenaed person in history. Only to come back against all odds. They shot at him. To win decisively early in the night, it would be the greatest, I don't want to use the word revenge. I think it's a little bit too harsh, but maybe it's not. Honestly, they've tried to destroy his life. They've tried to separate our family. They've tried to destroy our company. They've done everything that they could to take down Donald Trump. To win early in the night, decisively, it would be the greatest kind of retribution that you could possibly
to go after, you and your brother in the way that they did. I mean, I had a long talk with your dad about that the other night, weirdly. And he's pretty emotionally controlled, but I don't think I'm saying anything out of school. He seemed like, just thinking about it, upset him in a real way. That was my read on it.
Look what Adam Schiff did to Don.
Exactly.
Right? You colluded with Russia. We're going to throw you in jail for the rest of your life. It's treason. Don had nothing to do with Russia. I was the guy that got the calls from the Washington Post, New York Times, saying, Eric, I hear you have secret servers that are connected to the Kremlin in the basement of Trump Tower. Now, Tucker, I want to bring you through the basics, right? You don't put servers in basements because basements flood. Let's just go, 101. Second of all, we're largely a cloud-based. The FBI knew this day one that there were no servers in the basement and that the whole thing was a made-up sham, and they let it go on for a 3-year period of time. So think because some greedy woman wanted to get an extra 3 votes, they literally pitted the 2 biggest nuclear superpowers against each other, almost destroyed all communication, all relationship that you could have, right? In this kind of phantom made-up story, they pitted the largest superpowers against each other so Hillary Clinton could get 20 more votes if people actually believed it.
And we're on the brink of nuclear war with Russia right now because of this.
It's truly sick. I mean, you know how many situations there have been over history where somebody shot up a weather satellite and they thought there was a missile coming over the pole and they had to use that phone, right? I mean, this is pretty well documented in history that these kinds of things have happened. And guess what? They were always had the ability to make a phone call. I mean, think all of a sudden it's Russia collusion and you pit Vladimir Putin and Trump against one another, and that call can't be made in the middle of the night when something as innocent as a satellite goes up in space or something along those lines. And I mean, think of what that could lead to, all because of absolute greed. And it's not just the Russia hoax. It's the 2 impeachments. It's going after Kavanaugh. It's ripping him off of Facebook. It's ripping him off of Instagram and Twitter, right? It's the 110 subpoenas to me. It's raiding Barron's room, raiding Melania's room, right? Taking him off the ballot in Colorado, taking him off the ballot in Maine, trying to kill him. And despite that, here we are. Here we are on November 5th. It's 10:40? And it looks like in the next 20 minutes, 2 more states that are just critical states could fall. Pennsylvania looks great, all the internal data. I think we're going to win Pennsylvania in a big way. I think we're going to win Wisconsin. I think we're going to win Nevada, and I think we're going to win Arizona.
You're freaking me out. Just when you put it that way, I have to say, Trump always gets attacked for being vindictive and all this stuff. It's like, I've spent a lot of time talking to him. I've never heard him describe what you just described in the way that he did. He's actually weirdly not vindictive at all.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Because when you lay it out like that, it's really...
I think it bothers a child more than it bothers the actual
person. Of course, right. I get it.
I take the insults hurled at him much more personally than I take insults hurled at me, right?
Of course.
You see the absolute massacre that they put him through as a billionaire who did not need this job.
I know.
Right? He's the last guy that needed this job. Believe me, his life would be exponentially better sitting here at Mar-a-Lago enjoying life, right? And he wants to do this because he wants to save this country. And, he's hell-bent on saving this country. There are no vacations. I mean, the 2 of us haven't slept in 48 hours because we were in 7 different rallies in the last 36 hours leading up to this. I mean, we got in at 5:30 this morning. He went straight off to vote when he effectively got in early this morning. And, the guy's worked his ass off. The guy's absolutely worked his ass off. He gets nothing other than subpoenas and weaponization of government and sitting in courthouses all day long. And so it's actually really vindication of the American people. It's not vindication of Donald Trump. It's vindication of the American people, which is, hey, listen, government, we understand your games, and you've tried every single one of them, and we haven't believed you. And at the end of it, we're going to go vote for the guy that you've tried to take down mercilessly because we don't like you. You considered us the flyover states. You forgot about us. We weren't human to you, right? We were this kind of subhuman class to most of the elites in Washington, D.C. You forgot about us. And you know what? Now we're going to go and we're going to support the guy that you tried to take down, but the guy that was fighting for us every single day. And as a son, it's the greatest feeling in the world. If he wins this overwhelmingly, if he gets 315, 316 electoral votes, there's a possibility that he wins literally the popular vote or comes as close as anybody could possibly come to winning the popular vote. It would be the greatest vindication that everything that he's fought for mattered. That it mattered to the American people, that it mattered to this country, that it mattered to the heart and soul of this nation. And there's nothing that would make me more proud.
It's just the most unbelievable story. I just think I've been too close to it for too long. I can't really, honestly, until you started talking and laid it out that way, I've never thought about it in this way. But when he lost in 2020, and I thought there was something wrong with it. Now I'm totally convinced it was stolen. I always get taken off YouTube for saying that, but I believe that. But nobody backed him. Everyone's like, "Oh, shut up, go away." People mocked him. His own party wanted him out of there. Sure. They were embarrassed of him. They hated that he wouldn't stop. They hated that oh, shut up. They wouldn't let him on Fox News. Like, he was not allowed to talk.
And you know what? For every one of the things that I named, right? The impeachments and the Kavanaughs and the Twitters and Facebooks and the censorship and everything. For every one of those things that I just named, there's 100 that the public never saw.
Oh, I know.
That never, never made it across your channels. Never. I know. That were just personal attacks that were so vindictive you can't possibly imagine, right? And yet he stood up every single day and he fought the nonsense. And
it's crazy though. I mean, everybody abandoned him. He was literally like him and Rudy.
Yeah.
Like it was.
And against every weaponized system. And that's one thing that people forget. It's not just the attacks. They weaponized the DOJ. They weaponized the FBI. They weaponized the mainstream media. You know better than anybody. You were like the face of it, right, for the longest time. They weaponized social media when they started pulling them off those platforms. They weaponized Department of Health, right? I mean, remember the doctors came out, hey, hydroxychloroquine might work, right? They started ripping licenses. They weaponized everything. They weaponized the military with, Milley coming out. I want to understand white race. I mean, they weaponized every single government institution that we had as a country. And then they weaponized the mainstream media, and you had one guy. Maybe one guy with a little bit of us standing on the stage, right, with a loud voice, but you had one guy that literally defeated it all. And he did that because he had the American people behind him. But really, think about the David and Goliath story of all of that. If he wins tonight, which he's on the brink of doing, it was one guy that beat the American media and all the other weaponized systems that tried to take him down. I mean, it's fascinating, right? As a guy who came in, he didn't know what a delegate was when we got into politics. I mean, literally, we didn't know what the hell a caucus was. I remember getting to Iowa and asking some little staffer, I'm about to speak at a big caucus. Can somebody explain to me what the hell a caucus? And by the way, you didn't know either until you got into politics, right?
Come on. I still don't know. I've covered 1 million caucuses.
And so a guy who literally knew not a damn thing about the system beat Hillary, one of the greatest political dynasties ever. Beat her when she outraised him 5-1. I mean, she raised $1.5 billion. I mean, he put in $200 million and raised another $100 million. I mean, against all odds, and then beat the mainstream media in this country, beat that whole weaponized system. He was down, he was out. There were serious questions about what happened in 2020, and I'm not a conspiracy guy. I'm not like the tinfoil hat. It's just a fact, right? Statistically, you could prove it.
He's at 210 right now.
And then he comes back after all of that, and he wins. And he wins by a massive electoral number. It will be one of the greatest comeback stories of all time, right?
The greatest I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like it, like ever.
And one last thing, not to get too deep with you, but
no, I'm loving this, and I've never heard you. I mean, I've talked to you 1 million times. I've never heard you like this.
He wrote 2 books, right? One was The Art of the Deal, and The Art of the Deal, if you look at it, like it's just kind of the parallels to the 2016 campaign is really incredible. But then he wrote The Art of the Comeback years later, right? He had the financial problems in the early 90s. Interest rates went up to 18%. He was heavily levered. And he fought his ass off to come back from the brink of... And he came back bigger and stronger than he... Right? And so he wrote a second book, The Art of the Comeback. And I've always said that those books mirror his life in in politics, and no one ever, for some reason, puts it together. If he does what I think he's going to do within the next hour, 2 hours, if CNN decides to drag it out, it's going to be the greatest comeback in American history. It might be the greatest comeback in political history. Down and out with everyone against you, sitting in a freezing cold courtroom with 34 indictments and everything else they tried to do to bury him and bankrupt him and destroy his family and split all of us up. And now all of a sudden you're here on the 1 yard line. Tucker, it's awesome. I mean, it's truly a fairy tale story. And it's a story, in fact, I think that if you wrote it down in a novel, people wouldn't believe you.
Man, it's not the life you expected, I bet.
It's a very different life than we expected.
Well, that was amazing. I will not forget this conversation.
He did say one last thing. Coming down that escalator, that first day, right, the elevator, he goes, you're going to remember who your friends are, your real friends are, and they're going to hit us in ways that you can never possibly imagine. They're going to be ruthless. They're going to be ruthless. And
he said that day?
He said that going down the elevator before we got on the escalator, before he announced, obviously, in 2016.
Did you believe him?
Yes, because he's got good intuition, but never to the extent.
I mean, were you for it?
Oh, I was totally for it. Oh,
in 16 you were for it?
Oh, I was totally for it.
Why?
But Tucker, just remember one thing about 16.
Like, you had a pretty good deal going.
Is 16, we thought that the deep state was like Nancy Pelosi being in government for 40 years, right? Like, literally, like, Joe Biden's been in government, 15 years longer than I've been alive, and I've got gray in my beard, right? So that was, remember, like, Drain the Swamp?
Yeah.
Remember this chance?
Yeah.
That was like, okay, get rid of Maxine Waters, who's been there for 40 years. It wasn't like, okay, you're going to have the CIA come after you. You're going to have the DOJ come after you. You're going to have every AG and DA weaponized against you. You're going to have made-up hoaxes. I don't think we could have ever comprehended truly how rough it was going to be. And I think his words really rang true. They're going to come after us in ways that you can't possibly imagine.
Man, if he wins in the next hour, I'm going to come find you because I just want to shake your hand. Eric Trump, that was wonderful. Thank you.
That was fun.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So I think it's pretty clear that a pivotal figure, I'm not sucking up, I've never taken any money from the man, just want to be clear about that, but a pivotal figure not just in this election, but in the history of this country is Elon Musk, and who was just walked in with his son, who's so cute, it's ridiculous. That kid. Oh, hey, what are you doing?
You want to just sit on my knee or something? Okay, I guess so. All right, well, got mini-me here.
It certainly is.
Mini-me, you complete me.
What's your name? What's your name?
Actually, I'm going to show you. And then there's this,
we're on TV.
I think there is.
This is wild.
Should we help President Trump?
Yeah.
Well, you have.
Truth from the mouth of babes.
It looks like, it looks.
I started this, the quiet lead.
I don't know what you're saying, X. But you're getting, you have the general vibe.
Yeah.
Before in SpaceX, and quietly just do whatever we want.
I like your laugh. That's a laugh of an honest man.
Yeah.
I think this. What's your assessment? Did this work? Is he going to win?
Yeah, it is. Not for now. No.
I think it's done.
You think it's done?
Yeah.
But not for now.
Not for long. So where are we? 89. Okay, so it's 10:52. It's a little earlier than Obama told us we're gonna have to wait a month or something.
Yeah.
You want to know what it is? Start for L.
I'm looking at the data as it comes in from every county in Pennsylvania,
Oh, he can tell us. It's all right.
And it seems extremely likely that, if not a certainty, that
So then we're done.
Done.
I mean, are you surprised? Because I'm shocked by how quickly this happened.
I'm not particularly surprised because the
No.
that's look okay. So we might have to.
Sammy Timo, oh, she's so nice. You don't need to worry. She's really nice.
So let's see. So I think more relevant than the polls is looking at the early voting data. And if you look at the early voting data in Pennsylvania, for example, and you compare the Republican minus Democrat vote across all of the swing states, but certainly in Pennsylvania, the delta was, as of this morning, I believe 602,000. So meaning like the relative to 2020.
Right.
So if you say like, okay, how is President Trump doing relative to 2020? The difference in early voting was over 600,000. The margin of victory, Biden's margin of victory in 2020 was only 80,000, which so a reasonable extrapolation, assuming that, let's assume that the in-person voting is no better than 2020, then you would expect a margin of victory for President Trump of approximately 500,000.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't think you necessarily need to be like some incredible prognosticator if you just look at the data.
But they were telling us, in CNN.
They'll.
but why particularly? What was the point of lying about it?
Well, I don't know if they're lying. Maybe they just don't understand. I mean, I've been posting on X about this. I literally post the charts and I post the data. I'm just looking at the data.
But how could Trump win? I mean, after they indicted him, he's a rapist, he's a criminal. I mean, they've been attacking Trump like every day for 9 years, and he wins bigger this time than in 2016 against a candidate who's outspending him 3-1 all in. How could that happen?
No, it's remarkable. In fact, it's not just that the Kamala machine puppet machine campaign. Is outspending. It's not the Dems are massively outspending the Republicans in the swing states, including any contribution that I make. But you also have the sort of legacy mainstream media, which is overwhelmingly in favor of Kamala. They might as well be an extension of the DNC.
Well, they are.
Yeah. The DNC just sends them whatever the talking points are, and they all just talk like NPCs essentially all day long, instantly. And then you've also got, God knows how many celebrity endorsements. I mean, it's like sort of running out of, is anyway, call it 80%, 90% of celebrity endorsements on the Dem side. So you basically you have what appears to be a deck that is very much stacked in favor of the Dem. Like you say, how can a Republican win at all?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, one of the things that we did do to kind of even the odds was we massively improved the Republican ground game, My America PAC. Massively improved the Republican ground game in the swing states. So the Democrats not only have the best ground game, just in terms of knocking on doors, talking to people, sounds simple, just having a good sort of word of mouth virality campaign, having good messaging that appeals to people's specific interests. And then making sure people get to the polls. Just making sure that people have transport. The Democrats are normally extremely good with getting making it convenient. Because for a lot of people, if they'll vote, it's just maybe they don't have a ride. You know? So we just made sure everyone had a ride. We made sure that we paid particular attention to the Amish community in Pennsylvania.
That's amazing.
Which is why
Had anyone ever gotten the Amish out to vote before?
Not in significant numbers. But the Democrats did make a mistake because there was government overreach and with some of the Amish farmers.
Yes.
They're just, for them, there's no such thing as like organic farming or not organic. They're farmers. They've been farming the same way for a long time, and there was some, just government overreach that shut down some Amish farmers, which really, made them pretty upset. You just need to be able to channel that, the fact that they're upset and well, there's a thing you can do about it, which is called voting, and we're happy to, transport you to. They're allowed to ride in vans if so long as they're not driving the van. So we're just making sure we bring them to the polls and they vote how they want to vote, which is going to be like 99.9%. Actually, call it 100.
Call it 100 at
Call it 100.
least.
Call it 100.
So these are
In
raw
favor
milk
of Trump.
producers.
Yeah.
So you endorsed Trump within minutes of him being shot. I mean,
Yeah.
how many? I mean, it was literally minutes, I think, as I remember.
Yeah.
And then you just went more all in than I've ever seen anybody ever go.
Yeah.
What was the? Did you ever doubt, or did you just decide to go all in and you just did it?
I mean, my philosophy is you play to win. You don't play by half measure. So, yeah, I mean, I was with the team every day, 7 days a week, just working the early votes in Pennsylvania and other swing states. First registrations. First, like if people don't register, they can't vote. So the initial focus was just maximizing registrations, and then once the registration deadline was over, just getting the early votes. Yeah.
X, from my perspective, played a pivotal role not just in this election but in keeping the country alive.
Yeah. Well, X is, I think, the one place where you can find out the truth.
Yes.
And
the only place.
Yeah.
So how much pressure, to the extent you can say, has there been on you to shut it down or to censor it?
Well, I mean, apart from the multiple Democrats saying that I should go, they want to put me in jail, take away all government contracts from my companies, nationalize my companies, deport me as an illegal, and have me arrested because I'm apparently Putin's best friend. Nothing besides those things.
So you saw Rachel Maddow sort of casually, who's the single most popular media figure on the left.
Yeah.
For the record, say just sort of casually, well, Elon Musk will obviously need to be separated from his companies. He can't be he can't hold government contracts going forward. Like, how do you respond to that?
Rachel Maddow is a crazy person. She's just a frothing at the mouth, crazy fascist, basically. Dressed as sort of pretending to be a liberal, but she's just really like I can't imagine imagine if she was in charge, actually in a position of political power, what a nightmare that would be.
Well, many would die.
Yes.
So do you expect the pressure will lessen now that Trump?
I mean, we'll see. I mean, certainly last time President Trump was elected, I mean, I think they tried to impeach him within like 20 minutes of him taking office.
Yes.
This time, I don't know. We'll see. They may. I don't think they'll be quite as intense as last time. Because I think we actually have a decent chance here of a significant victory, not a small victory.
Yes.
And at the point at which you clearly just have the public mandate, then you have the public mandate. I mean, I think the numbers I've seen we're close to winning the popular vote in addition to the electoral vote, even though there's basically been zero campaigning in California, which is the biggest state in the country. So, sometimes people say, "Oh, the Republican didn't win the popular vote." I'm like, that's because he wasn't trying. If you actually try to win the popular vote, I think you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't take that much. I think it made a big difference that President Trump and soon-to-be Vice President Vance went on lengthy podcasts.
Yes.
I think this makes this really makes a difference because people look at like Joe Rogan's podcast, which is great, and Lex Friedman's and the All In podcast, and to a reasonable-minded, smart person who's not like hardcore one way or the other, they just listen to someone talk for a few hours, and that's how they decide whether you're a good person, whether they like you, and especially like Rogan's podcast, 3 hours long. I mean, you could. This is why I actually posted on X the nothing would do more damage to Kamala's campaign than going on Joe Rogan because she'd run out of non sequiturs after about 45 minutes.
Yeah, you can't hide in 3 hours.
Yeah, like hour 2 and 3 would be a complete melted puddle of nonsense. So it would just be absolute game over. That's why I shouldn't go on.
So I mean, how does
but Trump? But on the hand, Trump he's there and there's no talking points. He's just being a normal person. He's having a conversation, and doing 3 hours of Rogan, no problem.
What do you think of him? You spent a lot of time with him in the last several months.
I think he's a very interesting, funny person, and much maligned by the media, obviously, and he's withstood a lot, and I think he's. You mentioned that as you mentioned, I endorsed him immediately after he was shot because when you see somebody under fire, what is their reaction to that? Because immediately, is someone brave or are they a coward?
Yes.
Okay, the bullets, they get hit by bullets. Blood's come down the face. It could have been a second shooter, and yet he's going fight. That's true courage.
Yes.
Can't fake it.
Impossible.
And America is the home of the free and land of the brave. So that's who we want as president.
It was
we want a strong, brave person as president.
Amen.
And he is that.
How are you going to be involved?
Well, I've said I'd be happy to help improve the government efficiency, obviously, Department of Government Efficiency, which I think is sorely needed. We've got a gigantic government bureaucracy. We've got overregulation. You've got agencies that have overlapping responsibilities. There's something like 450 federal government agencies. Almost 2 per year that company since America was founded. So I mean, we're just creating new agencies all the time, and it's getting to the point where basically everything's illegal. You just can't get anything done.
I've noticed,
and this translates to these become real costs to people. They're hidden costs, but they're very substantial. It's very hard to build new housing if you're burdened with massive requirements that don't make any sense. It drives up the housing cost. It slows down new housing starts. So we need to let the builders of America build.
Amen.
Yeah.
So you're not going to the gulag, it turns out.
Well, not immediately. I mean, maybe in 5 years. I don't know. They might be probably pretty grumpy about this one. But I think I got at least several years before I go to the gulag.
Well, congratulations. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Exciting times.
Amazing.
Hey, here's to a fantastic future.
Elon Musk, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. See you, man. Can't top that. We're going to go see Trump and join in the celebration. Thank you.